Chapter 64. You can't just use your eyes to see things, you also have to use your heart. Don't be blinded by appearances. How could an ordinary little pig take the initiative to form a soul contract with you, but as a summoner, you didn't notice it at all? Hearing Kai-Er's words, the teary-eyed Chen Inger slowly raised her head. Everyone else also felt astonished. No one thought that Kai-Er, who usually didn't speak much, could actually say something like this. She hit the nail on the head and hit the nail on the head. Chen Inger wiped away the tears on her face and picked up the little pig in front of her again. Although she was still very repulsed, her mood was much better. She couldn't help but say to the little pig, What ability do you have? I'm so sad, I don't care, you have to compensate me. Otherwise, I'd rather not have my natal beast than bring you out. Snore, snore. The little pig snorted twice and moved its long mouth forward. Its pair of small eyes suddenly lit up, faintly revealing a trace of distorted undulation. The same undulation also appeared in Chen Inger's eyes. She and the piggy stared at each other blankly. It really is unusual, this is mental transmission, Lin Xian said in astonishment. Mental transmission was a special ability that only high-level magical beasts could use. During the entire process of mental transmission, Chen Inger's expression began to change rapidly. First it was astonishment, then it was gradually replaced by a trace of happiness. The corners of her lips drew into a moving arc. Although they didn't know what she learned from the little pig, but looking at her appearance, this little pig was clearly not useless. Everyone was in no hurry and quietly waited. Not long after, the distorted light in the little pig's and Chen Inger's eyes gradually disappeared. Wow, so you're so powerful! Chen Inger hugged the little pig in her arms and fiercely kissed its bright and clean pig head a few times. Sima Xian was an impatient person and couldn't help but ask, How is this little pig so powerful? Quickly tell me. Chen Inger giggled and said, Haha, in the future, I won't be a burden on the battlefield anymore. I'm going to be powerful too. Waha. The little girl laughed and danced with joy. Everyone couldn't help but smile when they saw her lovely appearance of crying and then laughing. Although she was a little complacent now, it was much better than the gloomy state she was before. Long Haochen smiled and said, Tell us about it so that everyone can familiarize themselves with your abilities. Chen Inger proudly hugged the little pig and said, It says it's called the Mirror Treasure God Pig, and it's a magical beast of the 6th rank when it's born. It can imitate all forms of magical beasts it has seen before and turn into illusions to scare people. Hearing her words, everyone's eyes immediately lit up. It was not difficult to see a powerful magical beast. Long Haochen immediately asked, Then does the magical beast it imitates have an aura or pressure? Chen Inger was taken aback. She shook her head and said, I don't think so. Wang Yuanyuan frowned and said, Then wouldn't it be easy to see through? Chen Inger proudly said, As the saying goes, fake is real and real is fake. It can't only imitate. Otherwise, it would be called the Mirror Treasure God Pig. As long as it had a magical crystal, it could consume the magical crystal of any magical beast that was within a grade higher than itself. Not only would it be able to mirror the appearance of the magical beast that the magical crystal belonged to, but it would also be able to retain all the abilities of the magical beast for 10 minutes. It is now a magical beast of the 6th rank, so it can use the power of a magical beast of the 7th rank or 6th rank demons at most. Lin Xian, you can keep your bloodthirsty beta's magic crystal for me. My little pig only needs to evolve one more rank to be able to use it. Hearing Chen Inger's words, everyone's face revealed a look of pleasant surprise. From what she said, this Mirror Treasure God Pig could actually have the abilities of any magical beast of the same rank or a rank higher than it. Although it could only last for 10 minutes, as long as there were enough magic crystals, it could continue to show its power. More importantly, it was a good habit not to be picky about food. After a short moment of surprise, Lin Xin immediately returned to a frowning look. I say, Inger, we already have a gluttonous Haoyue, and you have another one. Sigh, we can't make ends meet. He was in charge of the team's finances, so naturally he was depressed. Qin Inger snorted and said, That's your responsibility. It's none of my business. Also, my little pig has another ability. There's more? This time, even Kair showed a look of surprise. Mirror Treasure God Pig was obviously a magical beast from another plane. They had never heard of it before. On the surface, it didn't seem strong, but with the support of a magic crystal, it had unlimited potential. This was already a special existence that had never been heard of. Moreover, the summoned beast would definitely improve along with its master's cultivation. Qin Inger was now at the 4th rank, and one more step and she would be at the 5th rank. At that time, her little pig would improve. As for whether it could level up again, although it was hard to say, its future development was predictable. Compared to the instantaneous combat power of the Evil Eye Lord, for the team, this Mirror Treasure God Pig that could mirror into any magical beast was obviously more useful. Under such circumstances, it actually had other abilities. It could be imagined that this little pig itself was probably an existence of an extremely high rank. Yes, it has another ability, which is to search for treasures. Otherwise, why would it be called Treasure God Pig? It told me that its nose is especially sensitive and can smell all kinds of treasures. It can also sense danger in advance. The higher the rank, the higher its perception. Everyone looked at each other, and their expressions became strange. Long Haochen murmured, I suddenly realized that our biggest gain from attacking the demons this time should be that Inger has a summoned beast. The team of monster hunters had just been formed, and could only be said to be in the process of familiarizing themselves with each other. Although no one initially despised Qin Inger as everyone's strength increased, Qin Inger was an uncertain existence in the team, and had become a burden on the battlefield, affecting the combat power of the whole team. Although this conflict could be suppressed for the time being, with the passage of time, it would probably explode one day. But now it was different. Now that Qin Inger had a summoned beast like the Mirror Treasure God Pig, her importance in the team instantly increased. In the future, she would no longer be a burden, and would even be the main fighting power. Of course, she would probably need the most support from the team. Everyone had their own secrets, and Qin Inger being able to summon the Living Soul Gate was one of them. Now that she had the Mirror Treasure God Pig, it was enough for her to spend more time in the team. I'm hungry, guild leader. Shouldn't we eat something first before resting? I'm already weak, and now I'm so hungry that I'm dizzy. Sima Xian said as he rubbed his stomach. Long Haochen suddenly came to his senses. Okay, let's go eat first. Among the team, except for Kair and Qin Inger, the other 5 had all eaten the Spirit Explosion pill, and were currently in a weak state. Although it did not affect their walking, the feeling of having their internal spiritual power empty was not good. Once they were hungry, they immediately felt dizzy. They opened the barracks door, and just as they were about to go to the barracks dining hall to find something to eat, they saw 2 3-layered food boxes outside the door. I didn't risk my life for them in vain. The Exorcist Mountain Pass's military is really thoughtful. Sima Xian laughed, and with one in each hand, he directly carried the 2 heavy food boxes in. The food inside was really sumptuous. Although it could not be said to be exquisite, there was plenty of meat, and there was even a fragrant broth. Although it was already cold, with the fire magician Lin Xin present, it was clearly not a problem. Everyone ate heartily, and then returned to their respective beds to rest and recover their energy. Qin Inger was overjoyed to communicate with her little pig, and even gave this Mirror Treasure God Pig a name, Madul. The military was very satisfied with yesterday's monster hunters' actions, and they did not give them any more missions, giving them ample time to rest. It was only when the sun was high up in the sky that the new order came. Assemble at the drill ground. The scale of the Exorcist Mountain Pass was quite vast, and because both sides were the mountain peaks of the Exorcist mountain range, it became a natural barrier. As a result, a lot of trouble was saved during the construction, and it was enough as long as the front wall was stable. The drill ground was located 500 meters away from the Exorcist Mountain Pass's city wall. It was an enormous open space specially used to gather troops. Previously, when Long Haochen and Sheng Lingxin left the city at night, the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment had assembled here. Today, the number 1 soldier monster hunters did not have a complete group, so Kair stayed in the barracks to continue resting. Right now, Kair had already lost her 2 senses, and Long Haochen would absolutely not let her take any more risk. The effect of the spirit explosion pill had already disappeared, but what worried Long Haochen was that Haoyue was still in a deep sleep. Although he could confirm that Haoyue had no major problems, it still hadn't woken up, which made Long Haochen somewhat anxious. The 10 newly promoted monster hunters were assembled at the drill ground. After a day of rest, these young elites had clearly recovered their spirit. Each and every one of them looked full of energy, and many of them had expressions of excitement on their faces. Indeed, in yesterday's battle, they had all raked in a lot of merit points. Not only had they killed a large number of low-level demons, but they had also received a few dozen merit points from completing the mission. Long Haochen still hadn't had the time to distribute the merit points. Their number 1 soldier monster hunters had consumed the most, and until the order was given, everyone was still in a state of rest. At this moment, it could only be said that they had barely recovered to their peak state. However, during this day, Long Haochen often felt an indescribable heat in his body, and the circulation of his internal spiritual force was also somewhat sluggish. As Haoyue had not woken up yet, he couldn't communicate with Haoyue. As for Haoyue's sudden fusion with him on the battlefield, which allowed him to erupt with the Radiance Knight's cultivation level, Long Haochen was also quite curious. Was this Haoyue's special ability? He had never heard of a demonic beast partner being able to fuse with a human body. He tried hard to recall the situation that day, but he could only recall the spiritual force in his body rioting. Long Haochen thought that even if that was one of Haoyue's abilities, given his and Haoyue's current cultivation level, they shouldn't be able to use this ability. Otherwise, they wouldn't have suffered such a strong backlash. However, this was still a good thing. At a critical moment, they could suddenly erupt with a combat power that was 1 level higher. This was obviously a pretty good trump card. Upon seeing that Long Haochen and the others had arrived, the other 9 Monster Hunters team leaders came up to greet him. As it turned out, Long Haochen had commanded properly in yesterday's battle and successfully completed the mission. Moreover, although they did not see that last stunning strike clearly, they could still feel the intense energy fluctuations. With such an experience, their views on Long Haochen's age had naturally changed a lot. The 10 team leaders had already arrived. Upon seeing Long Haochen, Gao Yingjie came up to greet him. "How is it? Has everyone recovered?" Long Haochen nodded slightly and said, "Leader, Kair has consumed a lot of energy, and she still needs some time to recover. I'm afraid she won't be able to carry out missions with us for some time." Gao Yingjie's heart stirred. He recalled the scene when Xingyu had stopped Kair from using that ability for the first time. He already understood a lot and didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded. "Leader, did you call us here for a new mission?" Sima Xian asked while rubbing his palms. The benefits of yesterday's battle were very obvious. Facing the huge pressure brought by the strong, he could feel that the speed of his internal spiritual power had increased a lot. The bottleneck of 2000 spiritual power was already very close. Maybe after a few more battles, he would be able to break through and become a grade 5 priest. After a priest reached the 5th step, they could learn several offensive skills. When he returned to the Holy City, the number of secret skills he could choose would naturally increase. Although Sima Xian didn't say it out loud, he was very anxious to improve his strength. In the team, his role was still quite lacking compared to Wang Yuanyuan's. Only by reaching grade 5 as soon as possible would he be able to play a greater role as a commandment priest. Gao Yingjie smiled and shook his head, saying, "Everyone completed yesterday's mission very well. The Exorcist Mountain Pass military is very satisfied, so they decided to give you 3 days to rest and reorganize, giving you enough time to cultivate. After all, you aren't soldiers, but came here to train. Today, I called you here for a good thing. You'll know in a moment." While they were talking, some people had already arrived. It wasn't just the people from the military who had arrived. There were also a few assassins who were completely shrouded in black, including their head. The general of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, Gu Jin, who had previously given them the mission, walked at the forefront. The members of the 1st Soldier Grade Demon Hunt Squad could see the box in his hands. Wasn't this the box they had intercepted from the hands of the demon race's bloodthirsty beta? Everyone subconsciously looked at Long Haochen. Long Haochen was also somewhat surprised, thinking about what Gao Yingjie had just said. Could it be that the Exorcist Mountain Pass planned to reward them with the box? At this time, General Gu Jin and the assassins had already arrived. Gu Jin first greeted Gao Yingjie and the other leaders, then turned to the 10 monster hunters. "You are worthy of being the most outstanding elites of the Alliance's younger generation. You have smoothly completed your mission and destroyed the demon's supplies. At the very least, tens of thousands of demon army soldiers will starve because of this. Your contributions to the Exorcist Mountain Pass will forever be engraved in the hearts of the soldiers and civilians of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. On behalf of the military and civilians, I thank you." General Gu Jin was a soldier. He stamped his right foot on the ground and performed a standard soldier's salute to the 10 monster hunters. The members of the monster hunters also returned the salute with the temple's salute. Being able to obtain recognition was a great honor for these youngsters. At least, up until now, their trial had been very smooth. Gu Jin smiled and said, "Let me introduce everyone. These 3 are seniors from the Assassin Temple's Chivalry Hall." Chivalry Hall assassins? Hearing Gu Jin's introduction, the youngsters of the new monster hunters were startled. The Chivalry Hall was the most mysterious place in the Assassin Temple. There were a total of 36 hidden chivalrous assassins. Every hidden chivalrous assassin was an existence of the 8th step, the most powerful existence in the Assassin Temple. The Assassin Temple's Deputy Hall Master Ing Suifeng, whom Long Haochen had met before, was also the Chivalry Hall's Hall Master. These 3 were actually experts of the 8th step? Then what was their purpose in coming here? At this time, the black-clothed man standing at the very front took a few steps forward. His body did not emit any powerful aura, so much so that he did not release any aura of life. He gave people the feeling that he was a faint air. But those with discerning eyes knew that this was a true expert assassin. He could blend into any environment. "Children, hello. I am the Chivalry Hall's hidden chivalry number 19. The black-clothed man's voice was somewhat deep and even somewhat hoarse. But the group of new Monster Hunters members all straightened their backs and stood there quietly. This was a big figure of the 8th step. They had long heard that the 36 hidden chivalrous assassins of the Chivalry Hall were only numbered and not mentioned by name. Now that they saw them for the first time, they were somewhat nervous. "First of all, thank you for everything you have done for the Exorcist Mountain Pass. This is the soldier rank number 1 Monster Hunters Captain. Please step forward." Long Haochen took 2 steps forward, his right hand clenched into a fist and lightly pounded his left chest. In a loud voice, he said, "Soldier rank number 1 Monster Hunters Captain Long Haochen reporting to you." This hidden chivalry number 19 appeared very easygoing. He faintly smiled and said, "No need to be so formal. You should recognize the box in Gu Jin's hand." Long Haochen nodded and said, "I recognize it. We obtained it from the enemy during the mission yesterday." Hidden Chivalry number 19 nodded and said, "Correct. In view of the outstanding performance of the team you led in the mission, and also in handing this item over, I represent the Assassin Temple to specially reward you with 500 contribution points. Please step forward to receive it. 500 contribution points? Hearing this number, a series of gasps could be heard. It must be known that the current weakest of the 10 newly promoted Monster Hunters teams might not even have 500 contribution points in total, and this was under the circumstance that they had obtained 200 contribution points after completing the mission. The Assassin Temple was unexpectedly so generous as to reward Soldier Rank Number 1 Monster Hunters with 500 contribution points. The other Monster Hunters were immediately in an uproar. Hidden Chivalry Number 19 indifferently said, "You don't need to be anxious. I can tell you that if you were not carrying out a trial mission, but an exploration mission, then the amount of contribution points Long Houchen could exchange for this box would increase by at least 10 times. I will let you see what is inside the box in a moment." This was the Assassin Temple's reward of contribution points. Long Houchen naturally did not reject the gift. Under the excited gazes of his companions, he walked in front of Hidden Chivalry Number 19 and revealed his contribution point insignia. Hidden Chivalry Number 19 also revealed his left forearm. Impressively, there was an ice blue contribution point insignia on it. He stuck it to Long Houchen's insignia and lifted it up after a short moment. He had already completed the exchange of contribution points. This Hidden Chivalry Number 19 was actually a demon hunter? The members of the Monster Hunters were collectively known as demon hunters. Since Hidden Chivalry Number 19 had a contribution point insignia, it meant that he had a team of his own. How strong would a team have to have such a powerful assassin? They probably had the strength to assassinate a demon god. After receiving the contribution points, Long Houchen returned to his team, feeling extremely curious about the item within the box. What kind of treasure was it, for it to be so valuable that even this Type 8 powerhouse was in awe of it? Hidden Chivalry Number 19 replied indifferently, "If Soldier Rank Number 1 Monster Hunters had not handed this box over, I'm afraid none of you would know about it. However, I can confirm that from start to end, none of them had opened the box." One of the warriors could not help but ask, "Sir Hidden Chivalry, how can you be so sure?" Hidden Chivalry Number 19 signaled to Gu Jin beside him, and Gu Jin quickly came to his side. This powerful assassin directly placed his hand on the lid of the box, replying indifferently, because very few people can resist the temptation of the box. As he spoke, he moved his fingers lightly, and the lid of the box opened. Instantly, a layer of dense light element surged out of the box, the gentle light element bringing along a faint white glow as it rose up, giving everyone a feeling as though they were bathing in a spring breeze. A petite body rose from within, slowly unfurling its wings as it tried to fly away in a dispirited manner. In that instant, everyone's eyes widened unconsciously, and at least half of them exclaimed in shock. Light elemental sprite. Other than Long Houchen, the smiles on the faces of the Soldier Rank Number 1 Monster Hunters who had just received 500 contribution points froze. It was actually a spiritual stove, and an elemental spiritual stove at that. Each of them stared blankly at the light elemental sprite that was struggling to fly away, their hearts filled with regret. Even Gaoingjia felt the same way. If they had known that there was a light elemental sprite in the box, no matter how long Houchen had tried to stop them, they would never have handed it over. Even if they had 5,000 or 50,000 contribution points, they still wouldn't be able to exchange it for a light elemental sprite, let alone 500 contribution points. As long as it was a spiritual stove, its value couldn't be measured. If it fell into the hands of those who needed it, it would have limitless possibilities. At least among the Soldier Rank Number 1 Monster Hunters, Long Houchen, Han Yu, and Sima Xian could all use this spiritual stove, and it was very suitable for them. Long Houchen's feelings were different from the others. The others were filled with regret or even pain. However, what appeared in his heart at this moment was pity. It wasn't that he didn't feel pity for losing the light elemental sprite, but this pity naturally appeared in the depths of his heart the moment the light elemental sprite left the box and released its own aura. At the same time, the scorching heat that appeared from time to time in his body became even more intense. Long Houchen was immediately shocked to realize that the scorching heat that appeared in his body wasn't because of the blood contract with Haoyue, but because of the little guy in front of him. It didn't seem to be in a good state. Very weak. The light elemental sprite on its body had even become somewhat unstable. If this continued, it was afraid that it would disappear into thin air forever. Today's weather wasn't bad. The sunlight bathed the light elemental sprite's body, and its dispirited and listless appearance seemed to have improved. It was trying its best to struggle and fly away. However, in front of a hidden chivalry assassin from Chivalry Hall, how could it possibly escape? That hidden chivalry number 19 didn't do anything. He only covered the top of its head with his hand, and all of its struggles became futile. From number 2 to number 10 monster hunters, all the jealousy that had appeared because of the soldier rank number 1 monster hunters obtaining the contribution points disappeared without a trace. They even sneered. This was definitely picking up a sesame seed and losing a watermelon. The difference between 500 contribution points and the light elemental spiritual stove was like heaven and earth. This was especially so for the priest, knight, and a few light magicians of each monster hunter's team. At this moment, all of their eyes were blue. If they could obtain the light elemental spiritual stove, their strength would definitely increase greatly in an instant. Hidden Chivalry number 19's eyes were black, and his gaze was deep and reserved. He saw the expressions of these Monster Hunters members and sighed in his heart. Although these children were outstanding, they were still too young. It was difficult for them to hide their true thoughts. However, this was also good. At least they were honest enough. Now you should understand what I mean. Hidden Chivalry number 19 said with a smile. When we saw this little thing, we were also very surprised. Temple Master Xing Yu said that since this thing was obtained by the 10 newly promoted Monster Hunters teams when they completed a mission, the Assassin Temple will definitely not take it for ourselves. It will be given to you as a reward. As soon as these words were spoken, cheers erupted almost instantly. Everyone was very clear about the use of a spiritual stove. Moreover, it was the easiest light elemental spiritual stove to absorb. No one would have thought that the Assassin Temple would be willing to give them such a precious spiritual stove as a reward. Just as Xing Yu predicted, these youngsters' favorable impression of the Assassin Temple instantly rose to a whole new level. However, there is only one light elemental spiritual stove. At least a third of you can use it. We can't split it and give it to you as a reward. Therefore, there can only be one person who can receive the reward. This will depend on your luck and understanding of the light elemental. Now, all people with the light elemental attribute step forward. Under the signal of Hidden Chivalry number 19, the 10 Monster Hunters teams with the light elemental knight, priest, and the others stepped forward one after another. Everyone was somewhat impatient. Among them, the one who was most eager and thought that she had the highest hope was the soldier rank number 4 Monster Hunters team leader, the only grade 5 priest, Lu Shi. Compared to the knight, the priest had a stronger affinity with the light elemental. They mainly focused on healing and were more adept at communicating with the light elemental. Lu Shi was a genius among geniuses in this aspect. He asked himself if his understanding of the light elemental would be inferior to anyone here. If he could obtain the light elemental fairy, then it would be able to sweep away all obstacles for him to step into grade 6. Even Lu Shi, who was usually very calm, couldn't help but feel his heartbeat quicken. Who else among them has a higher affinity with the light elemental than me? This light elemental fairy will definitely belong to me. Everyone who stepped forward had their own thoughts about the light elemental fairy. The difference was that the grade 4 cultivators were more of a test of luck, while the Grade 5 cultivators were filled with a strong desire and confidence. Apart from Lu Shi, almost all of the Grade 5 cultivators came from the Knights Templars. Long Haochen, Yang Wenjiao, Duan Yi Han Yu, and another Grade 5 knight. The priest, the knight, and the 2 light elemental spellcasters, a total of 23 people stood in a circle around Hidden Knight number 19. Everything is up to fate. Don't force it. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Hidden Knight number 19's voice suddenly became ice-cold. Previously, he was as thin as air, but now he was like the weapon of the god of death. In an instant, he burst out with an awe-inspiring aura, causing everyone to shiver uncontrollably. Long Haochen also awoke from his pity for the light elemental fairy amidst this murderous aura. Raising his head to look at the small figure struggling under Hidden Knight number 19's palm, his brows immediately furrowed. You can each release your own aura. A solid gray stream of air filled up from Hidden Knight number 19. It quickly spread in the air, forming a layer of ice-cold murderous aura. Following that, he retracted his palm. The small light elemental fairy immediately flew up. However, it only flew up a few meters before it immediately trembled and lowered its flying altitude. It was obvious that it was extremely afraid of the fierce murderous aura in the air. It was also at this moment that the rich aura of the light elemental fairy in the surroundings seemed to rise at the same time. Rays of golden light flashed. Every knight, priest, and magician who had the opportunity to obtain the light elemental fairy released their aura with all their might, looking at the little fellow with the most yearning eyes. Only Long Haochen was an exception. He didn't release his inner spiritual force, but just quietly looked at the helpless little fellow. His gentle eyes seemed to transmit some kind of message to it. His lips hummed as he said something in the direction of the light elemental fairy. Yang Wenjiao stood to the right of Long Haochen. He clearly saw Long Haochen's action, and in the next moment, he was dumbstruck to see that the small light elemental fairy actually flew towards Long Haochen like a swallow throwing itself into his arms. A warm smile appeared on Long Haochen's handsome face. He slowly raised his right hand, and the small light elemental fairy immediately fell into his palm. As it got closer, he could see the little fellow even more clearly. The light elemental fairy's entire body was snow white, as if it had been sculpted from the purest white crystal. It wore a milky white short skirt, revealing its tender white arms and slender legs. Its long golden hair was like a waterfall that draped over its back all the way to its feet. A pair of transparent wings constantly flapped on both sides of its body, restraining its long hair from casually fluttering. Its most distinctive feature was the 2 pointy little ears that stuck out of its golden hair. This was a characteristic of elves. Her pair of golden eyes actually had the same clarity as Long Haochen's, but a different approach. However, at this moment, her eyes were filled with helplessness, weakness, and gloom. Under everyone's sluggish gazes, the light elemental fairy nimbly fell into Long Haochen's palm. It looked at him, somewhat puzzled and somewhat at a loss. A thick golden mist of light rose around Lu Shi's body, but when he saw the light elemental fairy fall into Long Haochen's hand, he was immediately stunned. How could this be? He's a knight and I'm a priest. How could his affinity with the light element be stronger than mine? The emotion that welled up in his heart wasn't jealousy, but astonishment. No matter how he looked at it, this should have been his last chance. However, the light elemental fairy hadn't even looked at him once, and had practically flown straight towards Long Haochen. Long Haochen's gentle gaze carried a bit of tenderness. He used his fingers to lightly stroke her long golden hair and softly said, "Don't worry, I'll keep my promise." Hidden Hero number 19 smiled faintly and said, "It seems that this little fellow has already made her choice. This process is fair, and the Assassin Temple doesn't wish for any disharmonious situation to occur. All right, my mission is complete. Congratulations, Long Haochen." Long Haochen raised his head to look at Hidden Hero number 19, and respectfully saluted him, saying, Sir Hidden Hero, please convey my thanks to Sir Hero. Hidden Hero number 19 nodded towards Long Houchen, then turned around and left with the other 2 Hidden Hero assassins. The killing intent in the air also faded away. Gaoingjie very naturally arrived at Long Houchen's side and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Long Houchen. Let's go, I'll follow you back to the barracks." As he spoke, his gaze intentionally or unintentionally swept over the surrounding people, who were gradually turning jealous. Immediately, those jealous gazes completely melted away. Although he knew that these youngsters wouldn't snatch it by force, with Gaoingjie by his side, he could naturally avoid some unnecessary trouble. Treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Right now, Long Houchen still hadn't fused the light elemental fairy into his body. Sima Xian laughed, saying, "Captain is indeed captain. What should be ours must be returned. This is really like getting married and celebrating the new year." Seeing Long Houchen collect the light elemental fairy, the previously gloomy soldier rank 1 Monster Hunters members immediately had a 180-degree change in mood. Long Houchen didn't say anything. He brought his companions back to the barrack. Watching Long Houchen and the others leave, Duan Yi came to Yang Wenjiao's side, saying indifferently, "It seems that the distance between us and him is gradually increasing." Yang Wenjiao sighed, saying, "Everyone's opportunities are different. This isn't something that can be forced to change. However, we can use our unremitting efforts to increase the possibility of opportunities appearing." Duan Yi laughed, "Well said. It's better to rely on yourself than on others. Strength is the hard truth. Let's go, we should also go back. Taking advantage of the holidays, we can also calm down and train." Long Houchen and his companions returned to the barrack. As soon as they entered the door, everyone couldn't help but cheer. "Haha, this is too cool. Did you see the other people's expressions? Especially that soldier rank number 4, Lu Shi. Her expression was so ugly that it was about to drip water." Sima Xian laughed heartily. As for the light elemental fairy not choosing him, he didn't care in the slightest. With his cultivation of the 4th level, he didn't have much of a chance. Chapter 65. Although Han Yu felt it was a pity, it was a good thing that the one who obtained the light elemental sprite was Long Houchen. Lin Xian laughed mischievously, "That's really great. In the future, when Captain obtains the light elemental sprite, our overall strength will become even stronger." Kai, who had been sitting cross-legged on the bed cultivating, had already walked over. Chen Ying, who was carrying Madol, had already chattered about what had just happened. Long Houchen lightly shook his head and said, "Do you know why the light elemental sprite chose me?" Everyone, who had been in the midst of excitement, suddenly froze and looked at him in confusion. Long Houchen smiled and said, "That's because I used my internal spiritual energy to force my voice to say to it. I swear to the light elemental god that as long as it chooses me, I will give it back its freedom." Everyone suddenly froze and looked at Long Houchen in confusion. Long Houchen quietly walked to the side and pushed open the window of the living quarters. The sunlight outside spilled into the room, dyeing his handsome face with a faint layer of gold, just like his heart of gold. Long Houchen raised the light elemental sprite in his hand and said, "Elemental sprites are formed from the purest elements of heaven and earth. They are extremely intelligent, how could they be forced? Look at how gloomy their eyes are. If they lose their freedom, I'm afraid they will never be happy. They should return to the embrace of the light, to nature." Once again tenderly stroking the light elemental sprite's long hair, Long Houchen softly said, "Go. In the future, be more careful and don't get caught again." As he spoke, he extended his palm out of the window, letting the gentle sunlight shine on the little light elemental sprite's body. Lin Xian and Sima Xian were stunned, Chen Ying was confused, Wang Yuanyuan showed a bit of admiration, and Han Yu was stunned speechless. Even Gaoingjie had a puzzled expression. Only Kai, whose charming face was hidden by her veil, revealed a gentle smile. "Yes. It was foolish of him to do so, but it was precisely because of such kindness that he was my fool. The light elemental sprite spread its wings and turned its head to look at Long Houchen. Then, it abruptly turned around and flew into the sky with a whoosh. Soon, it was already above the roof. Its entire body was bathed in sunlight, causing the faint white halo on its body to have a touch of gold. Floating in the air, it lowered its head and stared at the barracks below with its dim eyes. Its beautiful big eyes blinked slightly as if it was thinking about something. Assassin Temple Main Hall. As Xing Yu listened to Hidden Hero No. 19's report, the corners of his mouth curled into a faint smile. Looks like this little fellow understands what I mean. Hidden Hero No. 19 asked curiously, Lord, could it be that you were certain that the light elemental sprite would choose Long Houchen? Xing Yu nodded slightly and said, Of course. This is killing two birds with one stone. Not only does it represent our assassin temple, but it also gives the spiritual stove to Long Houchen. No matter what, as a great-grandfather, I have to give my great-grandson-in-law a present. The stronger he is, the better he can protect Kai. Hidden Hero No. 19 said, This Long Houchen's affinity with the light element is actually so strong? At that time, the light elemental sprite flew towards him without hesitation. The other youngsters were all stunned and didn't even have a choice. Xing Yu smiled slightly and said, You don't have to ask about this. Go do what you need to do. Yes. With some doubt and curiosity, Hidden Hero No. 19 retreated. Xing Yu's eyes revealed a thoughtful look. Looks like this child Long Houchen's affinity with the light element is stronger than I thought. Even the light elemental sprite didn't resist him at all. As expected of the Son of Light constitution. With the existence of the Son of Light, how could the others have any chance? If that old fellow Yang Haohan knew about this, he'd definitely say that I'm a wily old fox again. But no matter what, it's still an advantage for the Assassin Temple. Xing Yu didn't know that Long Houchen hadn't relied on his Son of Light constitution to take the light elemental sprite away. He hadn't even emitted the slightest bit of the light element. What he relied on was his kind and compassionate heart. In the barracks, Long Houchen collected everyone's contribution points from this mission, and then checked the total. Everyone's mood, which had been somewhat gloomy because he had let the light elemental sprite go, immediately improved. When carrying out the mission to intercept the supply truck, they had killed a total of 4 dark green dual-bladed demons and 6 eight-eyed demon eye warlocks, as well as a large number of ordinary dual-bladed demons and demon eye warlocks. In total, they had obtained nearly 300 contribution points. Just this number alone far surpassed the other teams. After all, the demons they had faced were stronger. Apart from that, there was also the reward of 700 contribution points, as well as the bloodthirsty beta's 1,000 contribution points. In this mission, they had actually obtained nearly 2,000 contribution points. After everyone divided it equally, in addition to the original contribution points they had obtained, everyone actually had about 360 contribution points. Because it was evenly distributed, everyone's contribution points fluctuated by about 1 point. The team's total contribution points had already reached 2,520. Of course, this was after taking into account Han Yu's figure. This was a rather impressive figure. They were just newly promoted monster hunters, and yet they could obtain such a generous amount of contribution points. It was definitely an anomaly. This was no longer a matter of pure strength. It also had a lot to do with their luck. At this rate, they would have no problem obtaining first place in the team competition in the end. When that time came, there would also be a large reward of contribution points. After dividing the contribution points, Long Houchen smiled as if the light elemental sprite had never appeared. Alright, everyone, work hard on your training. Lin Xian, I'll have to trouble you with the medicinal pills. Lin Xian laughed mischievously. This is the first time I've obtained such a good material like the bloodthirsty beta. I just happen to have a few formulas to try. If we can succeed, it will be greatly beneficial to our future operations. Leader, is there an auction house in the Exorcist Mountain Pass? Gaoingjia nodded. There is. The Exorcist Mountain Pass is such an important city. The Sacred Alliance auction house naturally has a branch here. What are you going to do? Lin Xian said, naturally, I'm going to buy some things and then sell some things. With as a big spender, how can we not make money? They didn't conceal the secret of Chen Er's mirror image mythical pig from Gaoingjia. Gaoingjia smiled. Alright, then you guys rest. When there's another mission, someone will naturally notify you. Gaoingjia left, and everyone went to their respective beds to train. The more they faced the demons, the stronger their sense of urgency became. Right now, compared to the powerful demons, they were still insignificant. Only by unceasingly increasing their strength could they complete more difficult missions. Thus, they could become even stronger. The 3-month trial mission had just begun, and they were gradually getting into their roles. Although their coordination couldn't be said to be tacit, they had finally gotten into the right track. Everyone was smart, so it was only a matter of time before they got used to each other. Long Haochen pulled Kai back to their bed. Kai, how do you feel today? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Kai lightly shook her head, leaning on Long Haochen's shoulder. She said in a low voice, I'm already used to it, you don't need to worry. In fact, although losing my sense of smell has an effect on me, I can still overcome it. Long Haochen lightly sighed. You have to keep your word. Before your sense of smell recovers, I won't allow you to take any more risk. Although I haven't cultivated the reincarnation spiritual stove, you can't see, and now that you've lost your sense of smell, you won't be able to rely on smell to give yourself information. This will certainly have an enormous effect on your ability. Listen to me, stay here and rest. I've promised to protect you for the rest of your life. Kai gently smiled. I'll listen to you. Every time she was alone with Long Haochen, all of her coldness would turn into softness, just like a gentle kitten. At this moment, Kai-er's ears suddenly twitched. Long Haochen also subconsciously raised his head. This was because the burning sensation in his body had appeared again. The curtains on the bed split open a small gap, and a white figure quietly crawled in. Long Haochen pressed down on Kai-er's raised hand. It's nothing, it's the light elemental sprite. That's right, wasn't it the light elemental sprite that had suddenly appeared on their bed? Perhaps it was because it had received the sunlight, but at this moment it looked a bit better than before, no longer as dispirited. Gazing at Long Haochen, its 2 small hands made an action of supporting its cheek. Apart from its small body, it really didn't look any different from a human. Feeling its intimacy, Long Haochen faintly smiled, raised his right hand and waved at it. The light elemental sprite spread its wings, and lightly landed on Long Haochen's palm. A gentle white light constantly flickered on its body, and the burning sensation in Long Haochen's body suddenly became even more intense. Why did you come back? Do you feel unwell and need my help? As he spoke, a few drops of pure light elements quietly rose from Long Haochen's palm. The light elemental sprite's eyes immediately widened as the pale golden liquid circulated in his palm. Without hesitation, it used its 2 small hands to cup some of the pure liquid light elements and quickly drank it. Immediately, its pure white body was covered in a layer of golden light, and its pair of golden eyes also lit up. The gaze that had been looking at Long Haochen with some hesitation was instantly filled with surprise. Woo woo woo. The light elemental sprite's mouth emitted a series of sounds that Long Haochen couldn't understand. It seemed to be the language of the elves. Immediately after, it hugged one of Long Haochen's fingers. It opened its mouth and bit down hard. It looked very funny, as if it was eating a popsicle. Unfortunately, Long Haochen's external spiritual power was quite extraordinary, and the light elemental sprite's body was a bit too weak. It actually couldn't bite through the skin on Long Haochen's finger. The light elemental sprite immediately became anxious, jumping in Long Houchen's palm. The surprise in its eyes had now been replaced by excitement and impatience. "What are you doing? Why are you biting my finger?" Long Houchen asked curiously. Beside him, Kair also revealed a trace of surprise. "It bit your finger? Could it be that it needs your blood?" An elemental sprite needed human blood? That could only mean one thing. It wanted to form a contract with him. Long Houchen looked at the light elemental sprite in his palm in astonishment. "Little fellow, could it be that you want to stay by my side?" The light elemental sprite nodded its head without hesitation. It looked as if it couldn't be more willing. It was as if being able to stay by Long Houchen's side was a great advantage. Long Houchen's eyes also revealed a trace of surprise. Although he had restrained the desire in his heart and let this little fellow go, as a knight, how could he not want to have an existence like the light elemental spiritual stove? Since this little fellow was willing to stay, Long Houchen wasn't a pedantic person. He hurriedly flicked his right hand, condensing the light elements into a small blade of light, and cut his fingertip. A drop of blood seeped out. That light elemental sprite immediately used its two small hands to stain Long Houchen's blood, and quickly moved them in the air. At the same time, it spat out a strand of bright golden light from its mouth. It fused with Long Houchen's blood, causing it to turn a pure gold color. At this moment, the little light elemental sprite's expression became extremely solemn. The white light surrounding its body completely withdrew back into its body. Only that pure gold rune was rapidly taking shape. Long Houchen only felt that the scorching sensation in his body seemed to be affected by this rune. In a flash, it rose to its peak. He couldn't help but let out a muffled groan and his body swayed. He didn't fall down only because of Kair's support. A gentle white light was released from his chest. The front of Long Houchen's clothes instantly turned into flying ash. Immediately after, a small three-legged cauldron furnace flew out from Long Houchen's chest, and floated in front of his chest. Saint Spiritual Stove. At this moment, the Saint Spiritual Stove was different from the last time Long Houchen saw it. The veins on its surface had completely changed into the appearance of sunlight spreading out. The spiritual stove was a bit larger, and it was filled with a golden liquid spiritual power of the light attribute. Looking at it, it was like a wine cup from the glorious era was filled with amber-colored fine wine. Seeing the saint's spiritual stove, the light elemental sprite's eyes suddenly emitted two golden flames. The rhythm of its two hands immediately sped up a bit. The saint's spiritual stove slowly floated forward until it arrived in front of the light elemental sprite. Drops of golden liquid floated out from within. Without Long Houchen doing anything, the golden liquid naturally condensed into the same rune as the light elemental sprite. It didn't take long for the two runes to be completed at the same time. In the next moment, the two runes abruptly stuck together. An intense golden light flashed in a flash. The powerful aura of the light elemental sprite even sent Kair flying. Long Houchen only felt as if his whole body was immersed in a blazing hot spring. In the next moment, his body had already uncontrollably sat cross-legged. The bizarre rune was directly branded on the saint's spiritual stove. Immediately after, a golden rune also flashed on Long Houchen's chest. Next was a pure gold rune. Both sides seemed to be undergoing a process of fusion. The light elemental sprite closed its eyes, giving off the impression of a pious young girl. Both its hands were folded in front of its chest as it quietly floated there. The pure gold and gold finally perfectly fused into one, becoming an even clearer gold color. This golden rune once again came out from Long Houchen's chest. It slowly rose up and fell towards the space between his eyebrows. At this moment, the other soldier rank 1 monster hunters had already been roused by the sudden rich light elemental sprite. Among them, the ones who felt it the most were Sima Xian and Han Yu. They both had light elemental physique. That rich light elemental physique caused the internal spiritual power within their bodies to condense at least twice as fast as before. What's going on? Wang Yuanyuan picked up the divine soul shield beside her. Don't move. He's fine. That light elemental sprite has returned. It's taking the initiative to form a contract with him. Kai was bounced back, but she didn't fall. She stood on the ground, preventing everyone from approaching the bed. At this moment, everyone could only see the unceasing flow of golden light from within the cloth curtain, causing the light elemental physique in the living quarters to become especially abundant. Han Yu suddenly shouted, Sima Xian, hurry up and cultivate. With the help of this rich light elemental physique, you might be able to break through the bottleneck. Although Sima Xian's personality was straightforward, he was also very intelligent. He immediately understood Han Yu's meaning. He quickly swallowed the last spirit-gathering pill that he couldn't bear to use, and wholeheartedly threw himself into a state of cultivation. Kai quietly stood there, motionless, constantly sensing the movements around her. Fusing with a spiritual stove was the most vulnerable moment for any profession. She had to protect Long Haochen. At this moment, Haoyue, who had been lying in the corner, suddenly raised its head. Its 3 heads and 6 eyes shone with a purple light, and an incomparably ferocious aura burst forth from its body. The mirror image treasure god pig in Chen Ying-er's arms squeaked, and hid behind Chen Ying-er. Everyone, including Kai, felt their hair stand on end. They looked at Haoyue with a frightened expression. Fortunately, Haoyue's ferociousness wasn't directed at them, but at Long Haochen behind the curtain. 3 low roars sounded at the same time, and its strong body also stood up. It had been asleep for a long time. When it stood up, everyone could vaguely feel that Haoyue's body seemed to have grown a bit. Although it wasn't very obvious, it looked more solid. Haoyue's low roar didn't affect anyone else, but Long Haochen, who was sitting on the bed, trembled violently. The golden rune that had already reached his forehead also trembled violently. On the center of Long Haochen's forehead, 9 purple lines of light gradually appeared. A thick ferocious aura brazenly gushed out from the purple rune, and fiercely collided with the golden rune. Long Haochen spat out a mouthful of blood, and the light elemental sprite in front of him instantly paled. Its eyes opened, and it looked at the purple rune in shock. At this moment, the purple rune seemed to have come alive. Ice-cold, ferocious, valiant, and all kinds of powerful auras were unceasingly released from it. Long Haochen's consciousness was currently clear. He absolutely didn't expect that when he was fusing with the light elemental sprite, the saint's spiritual stove within his body didn't resist, but instead helped him. Moreover, the blood contract between him and Haoyue produced an intense resistance. As for the reason behind this, let alone Long Haochen, even if it was a powerhouse of the 9th stage, they wouldn't be able to explain it clearly. Compared to other spiritual stoves, the light elemental sprite's greatest advantage was that it possessed extremely high intelligence. The light elemental sprite in front of him originally only returned because of Long Haochen's kindness, because its body was really too weak. It was sensitive enough to feel that there were many powerful existences within the Exorcist Mountain Pass, and its aura was simply unable to be concealed. Although Long Haochen let it go, it was afraid that it wouldn't be able to leave before it would be captured. Since that was the case, it might as well be together with this kind human, Long Haochen. At least it was better than other people. However, when it arrived in front of Long Haochen and ate Long Haochen's liquid spiritual power, it discovered that the human in front of it actually had the constitution of the Scion of Light. In the world of sprites, although the Scion of Light wasn't called this, to the light elemental sprite, Long Haochen's constitution was more of a treasure than a heavenly treasure. As long as it was together with Long Haochen, not only would it not have to worry about its injuries, but it would also evolve much faster than its peers. After continuously strengthening, there would even be a day where, therefore, the light elemental sprite naturally didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation, and immediately chose to fuse with Long Haochen. The golden rune after the fusion was the contract between the two. To an elemental sprite, this type of contract rune was completely different from the fusion of other spiritual stoves. It was very clear that as the scion of light, Long Houchen was very likely to attract other spiritual stoves in the future, and it was even possible for him to absorb another light elemental spiritual stove. Therefore, it wanted to occupy the highest priority, which was to fuse its own rune into the acupuncture point between Long Houchen's eyebrows. But how could it have imagined that its moment of greed would provoke a strong backlash from Haoyue? The blood contract between Haoyue and Long Houchen existed between Long Houchen's eyebrows. There was only one contract rune there, and it would always be the highest priority for Long Houchen, as it could affect any other contract. With its dignity violated, how could Haoyue continue to sleep? Although the light elemental sprite was pure, it was really too weak compared to the blood contract between Haoyue and Haoyue. However, this was a backlash that had occurred within Long Houchen's body, and Haoyue's feelings towards Long Houchen were like that of a child towards his father, or a younger brother towards his elder brother. Sensing that Long Houchen's body had been injured, Haoyue stood up and immediately restrained its aura. The rune on Long Houchen's forehead also gradually disappeared. If it had followed Haoyue's original temperament, it would have definitely destroyed the light elemental sprite, and fused its pure light elements into Long Houchen's body. However, when Long Houchen had formed the contract, it had been in a deep sleep, and the contract had already been completed. If it had done so, Long Houchen's soul would have been injured. Therefore, Haoyue had let the light elemental sprite go. Feeling the binding sensation disappear in an instant, the light elemental sprite no longer dared to have any extravagant hope. The golden rune whooshed and drilled into Long Houchen's chest, while its body also lightly leapt, landing within the Saint Spiritual Stove's golden liquid spiritual power. Only then did the painful expression on Long Houchen's face disappear. However, the moment the Saint's spiritual stove once again fused into his body, an even more intense scorching sensation erupted in a flash. The thick golden-red flames practically melted Long Houchen and Kai-Er's first home in an instant. Long Houchen directly fell to the ground, and the clothes on his body were completely burned to ashes by the sudden appearance of the sun's flames. Fortunately, the thick golden-red flames were the best barrier. The others could only vaguely see the human figure inside, and couldn't clearly see his situation. Haoyue stared at Long Houchen. Little Light's gaze was the most intense, revealing a faint trace of helplessness at the bottom of his eyes. His body once again crawled down, and the three big heads each closed their eyes. A similarly faint layer of sun's flames also began to emerge from the little Baldy's head, lightly pulsating. At this moment, everyone could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Chen Inger patted her chest, pulling out Madul, who was hiding behind her. The fusion spiritual stove is actually so frightening. This light elemental sprite doesn't look big, but its power is quite sufficient. Lin Xian muttered, "Moral quality, this is moral quality. Good people will be rewarded." Captain let it go, and it chose to come back. If this isn't moral quality, then what is? Han Yu remained silent at the side. Apart from Kai-Er, only he knew that Long Houchen had the constitution of the Son of Light. Seeing the sun's flames rising from his body, it was impossible to say that he wasn't envious. Worthy of being the darling of nature. It seems that no matter how hard I try, I'm afraid that I won't be able to catch up to my master. However, the disappointment and frustration in his heart only lasted for a moment before he immediately sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. The rich light element also had a lot of benefits for him. As for the others, although they weren't of the light attribute, they were still close to it. Cultivating in this kind of atmosphere full of light element also had different degrees of benefits for them. Only Kai-Er didn't cultivate. She just quietly stood there like a statue. But no one doubted that if someone dared to approach Long Houchen, Kai-Er would certainly make a move. The pure light element released from Long Houchen's body wasn't something that the living quarters could block. Some of the nearby professionals had already reacted. Even Gaoingjie, who had just left, immediately discovered it. What's going on? Could it be that Long Houchen is fusing with the light element spiritual stove? Without the slightest hesitation, Gaoingjie immediately turned back. After seeing the situation inside the living quarters, he directly chose to stay. Everyone's situation when fusing with a spiritual stove was different. The degree of fusion was different, and the perception towards the spiritual stove was also different. This was especially true for elemental spirit. The deeper the degree of fusion, the more help the elemental spirit would provide. And this degree of fusion mainly came from the elemental spirit's recognition of its master. It must be known that the spiritual stove of this kind of life form would form a master-slave contract. Similarly, if the contract was forced, the role of the elemental spirit would also be reduced. Of course, if the elemental spirit didn't cooperate with its master, it would also affect its own evolution speed. Therefore, no one knew how long Long Houchen would need to fuse with the light elemental spirit. They could only wait silently. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. The sun's fire burning on Long Houchen's body didn't have the slightest intention of decreasing. Gaoingjie made a prompt decision and announced that the number 1 soldier monster hunters wouldn't participate in any trial missions for the time being and would stay in the living quarters to cultivate. No one objected to this. As long as Long Houchen could successfully fuse with the light element spiritual stove, it was more important to them than winning the team competition. On the 7th day, Sima Xian successfully broke through and entered the 5th rank. However, when it came to the 10th day, everyone was a little anxious. They weren't worried about the team competition's ranking, but about Long Houchen's safety. Gaoingjie told them that the fusion of spiritual stoves ranked in the top 10 usually wouldn't take more than 7 days. But now that 10 days had passed, Long Houchen's figure was still faintly discernible within the sun's fire. "Leader, I'll have to trouble you to protect Long Houchen. I want to go out for a walk," Kair said lightly to Gaoingjie. Gaoingjie was stunned. "You want to go out?" "Yes." "Then you go. Do you need anyone to accompany you?" After all, Kair couldn't see. Kair shook her head. "I'll be fine by myself." As she said this, she was already holding her green bamboo cane, pushing open the door and walking out. Compared to the others, she understood Long Houchen's situation better. If Long Houchen was really in danger, then Hao Yue definitely wouldn't be sleeping so soundly on the side. The others also thought of this point. Although they were somewhat anxious about Long Houchen's situation, they were still patiently waiting. Kair didn't walk fast, but she didn't take a wrong step. She went straight to the Exorcist Mountain Pass's gate tower until she was stopped by a soldier. "I am Kair, soldier rank number 1 monster hunters. I want to see Leader Lan Yinyu. Please help me pass the message." Kair's voice was very cold, but her thin figure and lifeless eyes made her seem lonely and desolate. The soldier blocking the way frowned. "Sorry, not everyone can see Leader Lan. Recently, the demon's offensive had clearly weakened. Although the war was still ongoing, the atmosphere within the Exorcist Mountain Pass was no longer that tense. But the military chief, Sheng Lingxin, was unable to command the war. Lan Yinyu, as the leader of the mage squad, naturally had to shoulder more responsibilities. "Then I'll call her myself." Kair supported herself with her bamboo cane and slightly raised her head. Suddenly, a dense killing intent soared into the sky. The soldier in front of her felt his whole body go cold. He was so scared that he took a few steps back and almost fell on his butt. But Kair's killing intent wasn't directed at him. Instead, it rose into the sky, and a faint gray stream of air rose up like smoke. Not everyone dared to release their killing intent unscrupulously in front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Moreover, Kair's killing intent came from the reincarnation spiritual stove. It was much purer and sharper than an ordinary assassin's. Almost a moment later, there was a reaction from the top of the city wall. Several black figures descended from the sky and arrived in front of Kaer. "Young lady?" When the black-clothed people saw Kaer, their expressions greatly changed. They respectfully greeted Kaer. "Take me to see Captain Lan Yinyu." Kaer's voice was still cold. The Exorcist Mountain Pass was a city of assassins. It was the location of the Assassin Temple. Ordinary soldiers might not recognize her, but how could the assassins from the Assassin Temple not recognize her? "Kaer Yu, why are you here?" Seeing her daughter, the somewhat exhausted Lan Yinyu immediately revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Seeing Kaer's frail body, Lan Yinyu's eyes couldn't help but flash with a trace of heartache. "How is he?" Kaer indifferently asked. "You're asking about your father?" Lan Yinyu stared blankly for a moment, then became overjoyed. Kaer didn't utter a word, nor did she nod. She just quietly stood there. Lan Yinyu hurriedly said, "He's already awake. But you also know about the backlash of the spiritual stove of youth reversal. Right now, It's good that he's fine." Kaer turned around and tapped the ground with her bamboo cane, making do sounds as she walked down the city wall. The spiritual stove of youth reversal still had a secret. The user had a 1 in 1,000 chance of becoming an idiot after waking up. "Kaer!" Lan Yinyu anxiously called out. Kaer stopped, her back facing her mother. "Is there anything else? You don't want to go home and see your father?" Kaer calmly stood there. After no less than 10 breaths of time, she lightly nodded. "Okay." Lan Yinyu's beautiful eyes practically gushed out in an instant. 11 years. Ever since her 3-year-old daughter came back, she had been unconscious for 2 years. Afterwards, she had always been cultivating. To them, she was like a stranger. This was the first time. Although she was still so cold, since she was willing to see Lingxin, it proved that in her heart they were still there. Okay, I'll go back with you." At this time, the demon's attack had just been repelled. The Exorcist Mountain Pass was in a short period of peace. Lan Yinyu impatiently came to Kaer's side, trying to hold her hand. But Kaer's body lightly moved, letting go. "I know the way." Having grown up in this city, she was too familiar with it. Lan Yinyu didn't insist. Wiping the tears on her face, she blindly followed Kaer's side. Seeing her daughter slowly, even staggering forward, her tears couldn't help but gush out again. She was still a child. She had shouldered too much responsibility, endured too much pain. She was so thin that Lan Yinyu really wanted to embrace her daughter in her arms and dote on her. However, she knew that Kaer wouldn't let her. The mother and daughter walked for almost an hour before returning to their home. This was a courtyard of the Assassin Temple. Normally, Xing Lingxin rarely returned to live here. Most of the time, he was with the government. But after using the spiritual stove of childhood reversal, his situation needed to be kept secret. He couldn't let more people know, so naturally, he was sent back here to rest. This was also the place where Kaer grew up. The green bamboo cane continuously tapped the ground, emitting do sounds. Each sound seemed to be knocking on Lan Yinyu's heart. Even without Lan Yinyu's reminder, Kaer could guess where Xing Lingxin was. Passing through the front courtyard, she entered the back courtyard. Just as she slowly walked forward, a voice made her stop. "Hey, big sister, you're back." "Who's this big sister?" A normal adult man's voice was filled with childishness. Anyone who heard it would find it incomparably strange. Kaer slowly turned around. She couldn't see, but she could feel that the person who spoke was squatting in front of the door and was raising his head to look at her. "Your father woke up after being unconscious for 7 days. After that, he would regain a year's worth of memory every day. Now, he only remembers what happened when he was 5 or 6 years old. If he knew that you're willing to come back to see him, he would definitely be very happy." Lan Yinyu said with a choked voice. Kaer silently walked in front of Xing Lingxin. She suddenly felt a little lost. She didn't know what to say to this father who only had the memory of 5 years old. "Little sister, why don't you play with me?" Xing Lingxin stood up and grabbed Kaier's hand, swaying it back and forth. Kaier was stunned for a moment, but she didn't pull her hand away. In the depths of her heart, some soft place seemed to be touched. Chapter 66. She still remembered that in the few days before Long Haochen absorbed the luminous spirit, he would talk to her about responsibility every day. Long Haochen told her that everyone had different responsibilities, and everyone carried a heavy burden on their shoulders. It was just that everyone's understanding was different. "Sister, why aren't you talking? Why are you wearing a veil on your face?" Xing Lingxin, who was 5 years old, asked tirelessly. He asked a few more questions, but Kai didn't respond. Xing Lingxin obviously felt a little bored, and ran over to pester Lan Yinyu again. "Big sister, little sister doesn't talk. Play with me, okay?" Holding her husband's broad and thick hand, Lan Yinyu couldn't bear it anymore. She suddenly hugged him and burst into tears. Her husband, a hero of the world, was tortured to this state by the spiritual stove's backlash. How could she feel good in her heart? "Take good care of him, I'll leave first." The green bamboo stick suddenly touched the ground, and Kaier bounced up. When she left this place as fast as she could, she suddenly found that the hatred in her heart for her parents seemed to have faded a lot. After leaving the courtyard and returning to the barracks, Kaier didn't know why, but she was surprised to find that the haze that had been suppressing in her heart seemed to have reduced a lot. She even felt a little more comfortable and at ease. This was the first time she had felt this way since she became the reincarnation Saint Maiden, other than when she was with Long Haochen. She couldn't help but recall what Long Haochen had said: forgiveness is to forgive others and also to forgive oneself. When Kai returned to the barracks, even she didn't realize that there was a touch of gentleness between her eyebrows. However, at this time, no one in the barracks noticed the change in Kai. When Kai entered the barracks, she was also shocked, because she was surprised to find that the light elements in the barracks had become more and more intense. The degree of purity surprised her. At this time, everyone's eyes were focused on Long Haochen's rising fire of the sun. The difference from before Kai left was that the fire of the sun on Long Haochen's body actually showed signs of taking shape. The rising flames behind him unexpectedly condensed into a faintly discernible angel. "What happened?" Kai nervously asked Gaoingjie. Gaoingjie said with some difficulty, "If I'm not wrong, the light elemental fairy should have evolved during the fusion with Long Haochen." He really didn't guess wrong, the light elemental fairy had indeed evolved. When the light elemental sprite fused with Long Haochen, it sensed Long Haochen's scion of light physique and immediately let go of its body and mind, thoroughly allowing itself to fuse into Long Haochen's body. When the light elemental fairy and Long Haochen fused, it felt Long Haochen's child of light constitution. It immediately let go of its body and mind, thoroughly allowing itself to merge with Long Haochen's body. Just like the radiant unicorn, the child of light must have a kind nature. The child of light must also have a heart of gold that was close to nature. This allowed the light elemental fairy to cast aside all misgivings. Although this light elemental fairy was very weak, it hadn't harmed its origin. Very quickly, during the process of fusing with Long Haochen, it repaired its body. Long Haochen's body's purity was unexpectedly not the slightest bit inferior to it. When the two perfectly fused, the saint's spiritual stove's breeding effect was once again displayed. The child of light and the light elemental fairy's fusion was a perfect fusion of purity and purity. It could be said that no one's constitution could be as perfect as Long Haochen's for the light elemental fairy. And Long Haochen's saint's spiritual stove had already evolved once, and its breeding effect was completely developed. Under these circumstances, the pure fire of light rose from within the saint's spiritual stove. Its outward manifestation was the unceasing release of the fire of the sun. With the addition of the light elemental fairy, It could be said that Long Houchen's constitution as the child of light was thoroughly developed. It caused his affinity with the light element to increase geometrically. With the addition of the light elemental fairy's assistance, the condensed spiritual power was too enormous. Not only was it transforming Long Houchen's body, it was also transforming the light elemental fairy. After 10 days, the light elemental fairy finally underwent its first evolution during this fusion. Any elemental fairy had at least 3 chances to evolve. Each time it evolved, its own ability would receive a great upgrade. As for whether it could continue to evolve after 3 times, that would depend on their luck. Without a doubt, the light elemental fairy's evolution had once again extended the time needed for Long Houchen to complete the fusion with the spiritual stove. But the members of the Soldier Rank 1 monster hunters only had excitement, especially Sima Xian and Han Yu. The richer light element made their cultivation speed much faster than usual. The others also benefited. Bathed in the aura of light, their body's constitution and spiritual power attributes would receive a certain improvement. Moreover, it was completely beneficial. However, what no one had expected was that Long Houchen's evolution this time would actually take such a long time. On the 24th day, the golden-red fire of the sun on his body suddenly changed. It unexpectedly turned into a bright golden fire of light. It must be known that the fire of light was a formidable ability that only a rank 7 knight could possess. Only, this fire of light wasn't ignited by Long Houchen himself. Rather, the light element gathered from the outside world was too enormous. At the same time, the light element condensed into a fairy form in a flash became clear. A beautiful enlarged version of the light elemental fairy floated behind him. This meant that Long Houchen's light elemental fairy had begun its second evolution. This was the child of light, a powerful child of light. The sacred fire of light burned until the 49th day of the fusion. Long Houchen, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes without any warning. He opened his mouth and inhaled lightly. Immediately, the sacred fire around him was sucked into his stomach like a waterfall. The aura of the light element in the barracks also rapidly weakened. The sudden change immediately roused everyone who was in the midst of cultivation. Their gazes simultaneously turned towards Long Houchen. As the sacred fire of light continued to weaken, Long Houchen's body gradually became visible. At this moment, a golden light flashed on his chest, and a brilliant golden radiance more than a foot tall floated out. A few soft and crisp incantations rang out, and a faint layer of golden light enveloped Long Houchen's body. It actually turned into a set of golden clothes, solving the predicament of Long Houchen's clothes being burned earlier. That's right, what had appeared from his chest was the light elemental fairy that had completed the fusion. However, the current her had undergone a complete transformation from before. The first was the change in her aura. The white light that the light elemental fairy had emitted had completely turned golden, filled with a divine aura. Her body had also nearly doubled in size, and she looked even more corporeal. In the middle of her eyebrows, there was now a diamond-shaped gem that emitted a dazzling golden light, adding a bit of heroic air to her beauty. The pair of transparent wings on her back had now turned into 2, making her flight in the air even more stable. What changed the most was her pair of clear golden eyes. All of the dullness and weakness had been swept away, and her bright eyes shone with a deep golden light. She was noble and sacred, but not overbearing. Instead, her eyes were extremely gentle, as if there were golden ripples rippling within them. She gently floated down to Long Houchen's shoulder and muttered a few words in the elven language. As soon as she came into contact with Long Houchen's body, she immediately revealed a satisfied expression. The radiant sacred fire gradually disappeared, and Long Houchen looked even more otherworldly in the golden light element that he was wearing. All impurities couldn't exist within the radiant sacred fire. Thus, even though he had been sitting here for 49 days, his body still emitted a clean fragrance. "I've kept everyone waiting," The golden light in Long Houchen's eyes gradually disappeared, once again becoming clear. He stood up, his eyes filled with an apologetic expression. Sima Xian laughed loudly and said, "Not long, not long. If it weren't for your help with the fusion this time, I don't know when I would have broken through to the 5th step." It could be said that, after Long Houchen's fusion, besides himself, the ones who benefited the most were Sima Xian and Han Yu. Especially Sima Xian, who had broken through the bottleneck of the 5th step in one go, finally possessing liquid internal spiritual power. Gaoingjie let out a long sigh and said with a smile, "You're finally awake. However, you've really brought us too many surprises. The light elemental fairy actually evolved twice in succession. Let alone seeing it, I've never even heard of such a situation happening. It looks like the compatibility between you and her isn't just ordinary." Long Houchen raised his hand, and the light elemental fairy, who was connected to his mind, floated onto his palm. Looking at the beautiful elf with bright eyes and white teeth, Long Houchen smiled and said, "She told me that her name is Yiting. Congratulations, Master, on obtaining the 2nd spiritual stove." Han Yu said to Long Houchen with a smile. Qin Inger frowned and said, I still haven't broken through. Why can't I be of the light element?" Wang Yuan said in a bad mood, "You summoners are all existences with almost no element. That's why you can summon all kinds of beasts. What element do you want?" Under the influence of Long Houchen's light element, Qin Inger's progress was also very fast. As early as 10 days ago, she had already reached the bottleneck of the 5th step. Unfortunately, she wasn't as lucky as Sima Xian. In these 10 days, she had been unable to break through to the 5th step, unable to condense and convert her internal spiritual power into liquid. Right now, she was the only one in the team, and she was also at the 4th step. How could she not be anxious? Lin Xian had a tired expression as he sat down on the bed. "Leader, if only you could really mobilize the radiant sacred fire. That way, it would be much easier for me to refine medicinal pills. These past few days have really tired me to death." Indeed, these past few days, the one who was the most tired was him. Lin Xian didn't focus on cultivation. Instead, he completely focused on refining pills and buying and selling medicinal pills. Every 1 or 2 days, he would go out for a trip. No one knew what he had been doing these past few days. Long Houchen smiled and said, "You've worked hard. Looks like you've refined quite a few medicinal pills." Lin Xian slapped his forehead and said, "You guys eat medicinal pills like they're jelly beans. It's not like I can't not make more." Although Gaoingjie could use the radiant sacred fire, he definitely wouldn't lend a helping hand. Everything depended on himself. Only then would he be able to help these youngsters improve better. At this moment, he said to Long Houchen, "You've finally woken up. Although you missed the 49 days of the trial, it seems like you've all improved quite a bit during this time. I suggest that you first consolidate the progress of your companions. I'll go and see if there are any more tasks for you to carry out. These days, the other monster hunters haven't been idle. I reckon that your merit advantage no longer exists." "Yes," Long Houchen replied. Everyone sent Gaoingjie out of the living quarters. The more time they spent together, the more they admired this leader. During the time Long Houchen was fusing with the light elemental fairy Yiting, Gaoingjie practically didn't leave his side. Kai had always been standing behind Long Houchen. When Long Houchen sent Gaoingjie off and turned to look at her, he was surprised to discover that Kai seemed to have changed quite a bit. The coldness between her brows had faded a lot. These days, Kai had gone out a total of 3 times. When she saw Sheng Lingxin for the 2nd time, Sheng Lingxin had already recovered his memories from when he was a teenager. And the 3rd time, Sheng Lingxin just happened to recover his memories from when Kai was 3 years old. When Kai heard his voice, she unexpectedly heard Sheng Lingxin, who had already recovered his memories from when he was 20 years old, squatting in a corner and crying bitterly. and the only thing he was muttering was her name. After returning that day, Kai didn't go out again. However, her emotions fluctuated unstably for several days. Then, the coldness between her brows that pushed people 1,000 miles away gradually disappeared. Seeing Kai-er's change, Long Houchen couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. However, now clearly wasn't the time to ask. Returning to the living quarters, Long Houchen took out the internal spiritual power testing gem and said with a smile, "It seems that we'll have to test it again. Who's first?" Sima Xian smiled. "Naturally, you go first, leader. After fusing with the light elemental fairy, your spiritual power should have changed quite a bit. I've heard that fusing with an elemental fairy with a spiritual stove can directly increase the internal spiritual power of the fused person. Your fairy has also evolved twice in succession, so the increase in your spiritual power is certainly not small." What Sima Xian said was the truth. Long Houchen also clearly felt that his internal spiritual power had undergone an enormous change. The surroundings of the saint's spiritual stove had already formed a golden ring of light. At the same time, the liquid internal spiritual power had become more viscous, and at the same time, it had accumulated to a considerable degree. Long Houchen was very clear that the viscous liquid internal spiritual power meant that his internal spiritual power had become more powerful. When using skills, the consumption of spiritual power would be a step lower. At the same time, the power would be substantially increased. Regarding the level of his cultivation, he was also very curious. At the moment, he didn't decline. He first grasped the internal spiritual power testing gem and slowly poured his spiritual power into it. After a moment, apart from Kai who couldn't see, everyone's eyes were somewhat sluggish. Lin Xian forcefully swallowed a mouthful of saliva. 3,000 Sima Xian muttered. "It's 3,162. Commander, you're already a 6th rank Earth Knight of the 6th rank. Not to mention them, Long Houchen himself was also dumbfounded. He absolutely didn't expect that his fusion with Yuting would actually directly increase his internal spiritual power by more than 1,000 points. In this way, perhaps his cultivation directly became the strongest in the team. Just as Sima Xian said, although Long Houchen's increase was enormous, this was closely related to his Son of Light constitution. The fusion of Yuting and him had attracted a large amount of rich and pure light element. During the 49 days of fusion, Long Houchen's Son of Light constitution had been thoroughly stimulated. What he didn't know was that every time Yuting evolved, his innate internal spiritual power would increase a little. Therefore, Long Houchen's innate internal spiritual power had already reached 99, second only to Kai-er's 100. Although there wasn't any substantial change from rank 1 to rank 5, apart from the increase in spiritual power, this meant that Long Houchen was one step closer to becoming a Radiance Knight. The difference between each rank was like heaven and earth. As the number 1 warrior-level monster hunter's commander, his continuous improvement was also improving the combat power of the entire team. When this monster hunters had just been established, everyone felt a little awkward when they called Long Houchen commander. After all, apart from Kai, he was the youngest. When this demon hunt squad was first established, everyone called Long Houchen captain, which made them feel somewhat awkward. After all, apart from Kai, he was the youngest. But as time passed, Long Houchen used his strength and performance in battle to win over everyone. Long Houchen used his strength and performance in battle to conquer everyone. Long Houchen took a deep breath and suppressed the joy in his heart. He smiled and said, "Everyone, let's test it." Everyone tested their internal spiritual power one by one. Sure enough, as Gao Yingxie expected, there was a significant change compared to the previous test. Chen Ying-er's innate internal spiritual power had reached the bottleneck of 2,000 points. She only needed to evolve to rank 5. Sima Xian's improvement was the most obvious among everyone. During the previous test, his internal spiritual power was 1,920, but now it had become 2,100. This wasn't just a numerical change, but a substantial one. After breaking through the rank 5 bottleneck, his internal spiritual power had actually increased by another 100 points. It could be seen how intense the light elements that Long Haochen and Yiting emitted were at that time. Han Yu also had a decent improvement, from the original 2,270 to 2,390. In less than 2 months, his internal spiritual power had increased by 120 points, which was enough to make everyone envious. Compared to them, the others' improvements were relatively less. Wang Yuan's internal spiritual power had increased from 2,160 to 2,210, while Lin Xian's internal spiritual power had only increased by 20 points, reaching 2,405. Kai Er's internal spiritual power had increased by a lot. She was the reincarnation saint, with an innate internal spiritual power of 100. Naturally, her cultivation speed wasn't something others could compare to. In the past 2 months, her internal spiritual power had also increased by 180 points, rising to 2,770, second only to Long Haochen's 3,162. At this point, Long Haochen's cultivation had become the team's number 1. Although this improvement was largely accidental, it had also further established his position in the team. More importantly, with the light elemental fairy Yiting, his future cultivation speed would also increase. After entering the 5th rank and 6th rank, Long Haochen also had a better understanding of the way to cultivate his liquid internal spiritual power. Hao Yue had also been in a deep sleep, but his body had grown invisibly. From the time he returned from the mission until Long Haochen woke up, Hao Yue's body had also grown from 4 meters to 5 meters. This wasn't just a change in length, but his entire body had become more majestic. The 2 protrusions on the side of his 3 heads, as well as the protrusion on his back, had become more obvious. Long Haochen had already completed the fusion with the spiritual stove and woken up, but Hao Yue was still in a deep sleep. Obviously, he hadn't finished digesting the magic crystal he had devoured. It's my turn. Time to distribute the medicine. Lin Xian took out a pile of bottles and jars. Although his face was still tired, his eyes were filled with excitement. Wow, so many. Brother has medicine, as expected. Sima Xian joked. Lin Xian thumped his own chest and said, "That's right, big bro has medicine. Come, let me distribute them for you." The effect of the spiritual explosion pill seems to be good, so I made some more. Everyone has 3 pills, just in case. The last batch of pills he made was almost used up. Although the side effects of the spiritual explosion pill were obvious, it could have a sudden burst of effect at a critical moment, which was fully recognized by everyone. You guys don't need the spiritual gathering pill anymore, so I made a batch and sold it. The sales were better than I thought, it's practically priceless. If I had known earlier, I would have sold some before. This time, I had enough materials, so I made a batch of spiritual recovery pills. However, this thing consumes a lot of materials, so each person only has 3. Each pill can restore 500 internal spiritual power in 20 seconds. Although Lin Xian played it down, when everyone heard his description, they couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. What did it mean to restore 500 internal spiritual power? 3 pills per person was enough to increase their endurance to another level. The last one, I made with the flesh of the bloodthirsty betas as the main material. Speaking of which, it was quite lucky. I made it in less than 20 experiments. I tried one myself, and the effect was really good. After taking the bloodthirsty pill, the external spiritual power will increase by 500, and the user will enter the bloodthirsty state, somewhat similar to the Baldi's berserk state. The physical strength will greatly increase, and the degree of integration between the body and the internal spiritual power will increase. This thing is only suitable for close combat. I estimate that it can increase the attack power of a melee fighter by more than 20% after taking it, and the effect will last for 10 minutes. More importantly, this thing has no side effect. Of course, its effectiveness will decrease as our power increases. Basically, after we break through to the 6th rank, it won't be very useful. But now, it seems to be quite useful. The bloodthirsty betas are indeed the 7th rank demons. Again, 3 pills per person. There's still some flesh of the bloodthirsty betas, so I will mainly make this kind of pill and the spiritual recovery pill. Oh right, the bloodthirsty pill and the spiritual explosion pill can be taken at the same time. Apart from himself and Chen Inger, everyone else got the bloodthirsty pill. Everyone put away the pills given by Lin Xian, and their gazes became fiery as they looked at him. Wang Yuanyuan couldn't help but say, "Lin Xian, you really are a genius." Lin Xian flipped his long dark green hair and said proudly, "That's for sure. Recently, I've been developing a medicine that can help us cultivate after we reach the 5th rank. But this is more difficult, and I still need to try one step further. The main material comes from those 8-eyed demon eye warlock. There are still a lot of materials, and I hope the experiment will be successful." As time went on, the role of Lin Xian's potioneering identity in the team was constantly expanding. "Inger, this is for you." Lin Xian took out a small cloth bag and threw it to Chen Inger. Chen Inger took it and asked doubtfully, "What is this? It's all pills?" Lin Xian shook his head and said, "Silly girl, these are magic crystals. That pig of yours doesn't have these things, so how can it fight? I bought them all from the auction house. One is 6th rank and the rest are all 5th rank magic beasts. Use them sparingly. These things are too expensive. Half of the money I earn from selling the pills is spent on these, and the rest is for buying materials." "Wow. Thank you, Big Brother Lin." Chen Inger blinked at Lin Xian with her big watery eyes, making him feel a little weak. "Come on, I'm doing this for our team. Little sister Inger, although you're very beautiful, for my safety, don't look at me like that. I don't want Yang Wenjiao to come after me." Chen Inger happily put away the magic crystals and snorted, saying, "What about Yang Wenjiao? He dares to control me? I don't like him, I like Big Sister Yuanyuan. Even if I have to be a lesbian with Big Sister Yuanyuan, I won't let him have it." Cough cough. Sima Xian coughed violently and glanced at Wang Yuanyuan, saying, "What's so good about being a lesbian? It's such a waste of resources." Wang Yuanyuan's expression didn't change, and she said, "What's so good about stinky men?" Sima Xian and Lin Xian looked at each other, both revealing a trace of a mischievous smile. Lin Xian said, "Say, if I sell Inger's words to Yang Wenjiao just now, how many merit points do you think I can get?" Chen Inger leisurely said, "It's up to you how much, just give me half." Long Haochen put away the pills and a trace of a smile appeared on his face. Their soldier level number 1 monster hunters had been established for a period of time. As they got to know each other better, everyone gradually got into their roles and could already do their own jobs. Their overall fighting strength was constantly rising. "Long Haochen, you guys quickly follow me to the city wall." While everyone was chatting, Gao Yingjia's impatient voice suddenly came from outside. Everyone hurriedly went out to greet him, only to see Gao Yingjia flying over with a serious expression. He didn't say much and only waved his arm. "Follow me." Finished speaking, he turned around and walked away. Long Haochen didn't dare to be negligent and quickly led his companions to follow him. Although he didn't know what had happened, it clearly wasn't something good. Kai Er's sense of smell had already recovered, so she naturally followed Long Haochen out of the living quarters. The group of 7 quickly ascended the city wall under Gao Yingjia's lead. When they arrived at the top of the city wall, Long Haochen was surprised to find that the entire Exorcist Mountain Pass's city wall was surprisingly quiet. The other 9 teams of monster hunters had already arrived at the top of the city wall and were responsible for defending a section of the city wall that was about 100 meters wide. When they saw Long Houchen and the others rushing over, they very naturally gave them an area of more than 10 meters. Long Houchen carefully observed them, and immediately discovered that the expressions of the demon hunters of the other 9 demon hunt squads had changed somewhat. They seemed to have gone through a lot of hardships and calmness, and were much less impetuous. Clearly, these nearly 50 days of training had made them not insignificant progress. In terms of running in, they had already surpassed the first soldier-level monster hunters. Gaoingjie stood at Long Houchen's side and pointed to the front, saying in a deep voice, "You guys look." Long Houchen shifted his gaze outside the city wall. What he saw wasn't important, but he was immediately shocked. It wasn't just the Exorcist Mountain Pass that was quiet, it was also very quiet outside. However, it wasn't that the demon army had withdrawn. On the contrary, the demon army was neatly arranged in front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. In the silence, an enormous austere aura constantly rushed towards the Exorcist Mountain Pass. The demons' formation today was unexpectedly neat. At the forefront were 10 square formations of dual-blade demons. It seemed that each square formation had at least 5,000 dual-blade demons. Behind the dual-blade demon square formation were 10 square formations of demon eye warlocks with 500 people. Behind them were the Luke clan's prowlers. The further back they went, the more powerful the demons were. At the very back, Long Houchen could faintly see dozens of colossi there. Even from the Exorcist Mountain Pass, he could faintly see that those formidable demons' bodies were probably more than 50 meters long. The demons weren't just gathering on the ground, but also in the air. The large number of demons' aerial troops were like black clouds that covered the sky and covered the earth. But they were also very quiet. Magical bird, demon vulture, dual-headed demon vulture, beta flying demons, as well as the duo and flying demons were all arranged in their respective formations. They seemed to be waiting for the order to attack at any time. In the center of the demons' aerial troops were 10 enormous existences that were more than 30 meters long. They were actually enormous black dragons. Seeing this scene, Long Houchen and the others couldn't help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. What were the demons doing? Had they turned out in full force? More importantly, there were some powerful demons that they hadn't seen on the battlefield before. In other words, the demons had mobilized their true main force. A tense atmosphere lingered over the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Although this impregnable mountain pass had only protected humanity for several thousand years, the demon army's lineup was unprecedentedly powerful. However, the devil army's lineup was unprecedentedly powerful. Once they launched an all-out attack, there was bound to be a bloody battle. Everyone tightened their grip on the weapons in their hands, silently waiting for that moment to come. Long Houchen and the others didn't dare to be negligent. They each changed into their own pei bei and arranged themselves in a defensive formation. On such a vast battlefield, their individual strength seemed very insignificant. But no matter what, they would do their best to kill as many demons as possible. This was no longer a matter of merit point. Defending the Exorcist Mountain Pass was of utmost importance to the entire human race. The tense atmosphere wasn't only on the city wall, but also in the higher tower. Xing Lingxin's memories had all been restored. He quietly stood in the center, overlooking the distant demons. Beside him were the high-ranking officers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Everyone's expression was very serious. The demon army was unprecedentedly powerful. It was clear that this time, the demons weren't just exhausting the population. Xing Lingxin's eyes revealed a puzzled expression. Are the demons crazy? Why did they suddenly mobilize an army? Even the demon emperor's black dragon guards have arrived. Are they preparing to risk their lives to break the pass? At this time, an aged voice came from behind Xing Lingxin. There are only 2 possibilities for the demons to do this. The first possibility is as you guessed. The demons plan to go all out and break through our Exorcist Mountain Pass. If that's the case, then let them come. Our Exorcist Mountain Pass can defend for thousands of years. My assassin temple has flourished for thousands of years. I don't dare to say that we can definitely resist the demons' all-out attack, but we will definitely make them pay an extremely disastrous price. Chivalrous Xing Yu slowly stepped forward, arriving at Xing Lingxin's side. Seeing his appearance, the nervous expressions of the generals on top of the city wall visibly relaxed. Having a ninth-stage powerhouse overseeing the city wall was an enormous encouragement to the confidence of the high-ranking officers and soldiers. Xing Lingxin didn't salute his grandfather. He was now the highest military commander on the city wall, so at this time everything was for the public. Then what's the second possibility? Xing Lingxin asked. Xing Yu said, the second possibility is that the demons have a big character. When the demons have important matters to negotiate with us, they will also put on this appearance. It's to deter us with military force, so as to increase the success rate of the negotiation. Hearing his grandfather's words, Xing Lingxin suddenly understood. If that's the case, the second possibility should be a bit more likely. According to the scouts' investigations, the demons don't have any intention of mobilizing their troop. If they really want to launch an all-out attack and launch a holy war, then the oppression won't just be limited to our Exorcist Mountain Pass. Xing Yu nodded his head in appreciation. That's right, it's like that. But I don't know what kind of tricks the demons will play this time. Soldiers come with arms, water comes with an earth weir. Just let them come at us. But I don't know who the demons are this time. I estimate that it's at least the top 10 demon gods. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to put on such a big formation. Xing Lingxin asked, Chivalrous Sir, the assassin temple. Xing Yu nodded his head and said, Don't worry, it's already been prepared. If they really launch an all-out attack, my assassin temple won't be easy to deal with. At this moment, Xing Lingxin's expression finally relaxed a bit. Now we can only wait. Just as the grandfather and grandson were talking, suddenly, from the back of the demon's battle formation, 3 enormous light pillars soared into the sky. The intense rays of light instantly erupted with powerful spiritual power. Even if they were very far away from the top of the city wall, they could still clearly feel it. It was precisely the light of the demon god pillars. Roar, roar, roar. The demons, who were still very quiet just a moment ago, suddenly erupted with a monstrous roar when the 3 demon god pillars' light shone. That was an army of several 100,000 demon army. At the same time, they let out angry roars. The enormous sound waves caused the Exorcist Mountain Pass to tremble, as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were shaking. Even the soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles couldn't help but have their complexions change in the face of this kind of ferocious might. However, the difference between them and ordinary people was that ordinary people would very likely go limp on the ground in the face of this kind of situation. But these soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles tightly grasped their weapons, and the fighting blood in their bodies instantly boiled under the pressure of the enemy's ferocious flames. Those 3 demon god pillars were the 52nd demon god Flaming Lion Demon Anluosian, the 61st demon god Winged Ox Mad Demon Saigong, and the 70th demon god Green Demon Mount Emo Quebec. Previously, these 3 demon gods had once tried to obstruct the brilliant Angel Knight Regiment. Naturally, Long Houchen recognized their existence at a glance. They really were worthy of being called demon gods. Their aura was unexpectedly able to make the demon army of several 100,000 boil like this. This was what Long Houchen thought. However, on the city wall, chivalrous Xing Yu's complexion changed. Not good, don't tell me he came. Chapter 67. Just as Xing Yu's expression changed, a dark golden light suddenly erupted from behind the 3 demon god pillars. That dark golden light was simply too huge. The thick pillar of light had a diameter of more than 10 kilometers. The moment it appeared, the bright sky instantly turned dark. The moment that huge pillar of light rose, the sun disappeared without a trace, as if it had been shot down. The hundreds of thousands of demon army that had been roaring furiously a moment ago seemed to have been strangled, and all sounds ceased to exist. This movement and stillness revealed an extremely strange feeling. Although the demon army no longer roared, their eyes had all turned the same blood-red color. From the weakest dual-bladed demon to the most powerful black dragon, every single one of them emitted an extremely terrifying aura. At the same time that the pillar of light rose, they actually entered a state similar to bloodthirsty. In front of this huge dark golden pillar of light, the demon god pillars that flaming lion demon and Luosien and the other two demon gods had risen up were as inconspicuous as wisps of smoke in the wind. The three demon gods had also respectfully knelt on one knee, their bodies facing the huge dark golden pillar of light behind them. What exactly is this? It was too shocking. All of this was too sudden and too terrifying. The most glorious scene that Long Haochen had ever seen was the scene of his father and the leader of the Temple League, Yang Haohan, releasing their respective throne of God. However, compared to the terrifying dark gold pillar of light before them, they were clearly much inferior. The dark golden pillar of light quickly completed the process of connecting the heavens and the earth. Everything in the surroundings was dark, and only the dark golden light it released could bring a trace of light to this world. Thus, the changes on the dark golden pillar of light became increasingly obvious. It was simply too huge, and its appearance could be clearly seen from far away. The entire dark golden pillar of light was engraved with countless strange runes. Most importantly, there was a giant dragon that was completely black and gold in color crawling on this huge pillar of light. No one could tell how huge the dragon's body was. The terrifying pressure even caused the air to collapse, causing the sky to distort. What kind of existence was this? All of a sudden, azure lightning began to appear around the dark gold light pillar. These lightning bolts constantly flickered, causing the dragon's statue on the light pillar to tremble slightly. What was even more bizarre was that the hundreds of thousands of demon army actually fell into a distorted light pattern and disappeared from the sight of the human army. No, to be more accurate, it should be invisible. At this time, Xing Yu's face was pale. Just his aura alone could make the demon army group invisible, and the huge dark golden light beam, all proved one thing. It was the last thing he wanted to see. It's him, it's really him. Ranked first among the 72 demon god pillar demons, Demon Emperor Heaven-defying Demon Dragon Emperor Feng Xiu. He actually came here personally. Hearing Xing Yu's words, the generals on top of the city wall were all aghast. Xing Lingxin's body swayed. Although he clenched his teeth, his fingernails all sank into the palm of his hand. The first demon god pillar demon emperor, heaven-defying demon dragon emperor, this title would always belong to one demon. A powerful existence that ruled the 72 demon god pillar and all the demon army. On the holy demon continent, the human had always been in a weak position. The main reason was his existence. He represented invincibility, represented the supremacy of the demons. He was Feng Xiu, with a delicate name, but extremely powerful, standing at the top of the pyramid of the demons, the first-generation demon emperor. It was said that when the first-generation demon emperor led the 72 demon god pillar to the holy demon continent, he originally didn't have this name. After destroying a large number of humans, he actually gave himself such a human name. After that, each generation of demon emperor used this name. Until today. From the first-generation demon emperor to the present, the one in front of them was the sixth-generation demon emperor of the demons. As the supreme leader of the demons, he had lived for more than 1,000 years. In the history of humanity, apart from the son of Samsara who caused the death of the demon emperor, the other 5 demon emperors all reached the end of their lifespans before giving way to the later generations. Even the demon emperor who died from the heavy injuries of the son of Samsara, because he was too old, he had passed his peak. The 3 words demon emperor in the holy demon continent was the symbol of invincibility. He was the ruler of the demons, and also the totem of all the demons. As long as he was alive, humans would not dare to lightly counterattack. The current demon emperor, the 6th, was already more than 700 years old, and was also the peak period of the demon emperor. Who would have thought that he would unexpectedly appear in front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass without any warning? No wonder the demons would put up such a big battle array, no wonder the demon army would be so unified. There was only one reason, and that was that their great emperor had seen it. Humans of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, listen up. Hand over all the 3-headed demon beasts in your city, or else not even a blade of grass will be left. A gentle and pleasant voice that could even be said to be a clear and melodious dragon's cry reverberated in the air. From that dark golden light pillar, a figure slowly walked out. His movements were not fast, but balanced. Each step he took was like he was walking on the earth. This person didn't seem to be very tall, only about 1.9 meters. His black waterfall-like hair floated behind him like a black roulette. His gorgeous black robe hung down, and there was a faint purple light pattern flickering on it. His skin looked somewhat pale, and his pair of blue eyes seemed to be able to reflect the starlight in the universe. As he walked out step by step, he didn't have any imposing manner, and everything in the surroundings was still quiet. However, the Exorcist Mountain Pass seemed to have been smashed by a meteor falling from the sky, and unexpectedly no one could raise their fighting spirit. This pressure came from the heart of everyone. Facing the demon emperor, everyone's deepest fear was constantly rising from the bottom of their hearts. He was really too powerful, so powerful that no one could raise their will to resist. Even the 9th-step powerhouse Xing Yu was like this. Next to Long Haochen, Kai Er's body was fiercely trembling, and a faintly discernible killing intent was hovering around her body. Long Haochen was gobsmacked, and he immediately thought of the reason. It must be the demon emperor's aura that aroused the sword of samsara in Kai Er's body. If the demon emperor discovered the existence of the sword of samsara, how could Kai Er face his strength? His heart was also filled with fear, but at this time, Long Haochen couldn't care less. He pulled Kai Er into his embrace, tightly hugging her, and released his internal spiritual energy, doing his best to envelop Kai Er's body. Strangely, the fear in Long Haochen's heart seemed to be a lot lighter than the others. Looking at the demon emperor walking step by step in the air, the fear in his heart was instead more than curiosity. The companions at his side could only struggle to prevent themselves from falling, but he could hug Kai Er and help her resist the restlessness of the sword of samsara. Feng Xiu's face was so handsome, handsome without a trace of flaw, but his handsomeness was different from Long Haochen's. This demon emperor's handsomeness carried a supreme arrogance, an evil power that could dominate the world, and even more so, an unquestionable dignity. The demon emperor's gracious visit to the Exorcist Mountain Pass truly brings light to our humble dwelling. Xing Yu took a step forward, and in the next moment, he was already in the air. Although his heart was filled with fear in the Exorcist Mountain Pass, he was the only one who could stand out. Behind the demon emperor, a terrifying demon god pillar with a diameter of 10 li flickered, and the huge black dragon statue was his back. "You are the current Assassin Temple's temple master?" Feng Xiu's voice was still so pleasant to listen to, even without a trace of anger. "That's right. This seat is Xing Yu." Behind Xing Yu, a huge gray dagger flashed, and a sharp aura burst out, blocking the aura emitted by the demon emperor. But people with discerning eyes could see that the aura emitted by Xing Yu could only extend 10 meters away from his body, and the gap between him and the demon emperor was obvious. You heard this emperor's words. Whether or not you humans are destroyed, this emperor is not anxious. To this emperor, you are nothing more than livestock that this emperor rears. Do as I say, and if you find what this emperor is looking for, this emperor can consider letting your exorcist mountain pass off." A gloomy expression flickered in Xing Yu's eyes. He was fully aware of the huge gap between him and the demon emperor, but at this moment could he really compromise? And on top of the city wall, there were at least 10 gazes focused on Long Houchen. A 3-headed magical beast? Could it be Long Houchen's magical beast mount? But that was only a 6th-rank magical beast. How could it attract the attention of an existence like the Demon Emperor? The Demon Emperor's face revealed a trace of a demonic smile. "This emperor will give you 10 seconds. After 10 seconds, you must give an answer, otherwise today I will flatten your exorcist mountain pass." 10. Sweat flowed down from Xing Yu's forehead. He knew that if he compromised, then he would never be able to stand tall in the Temple League. But, if he didn't compromise, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians of the Exorcist Mountain Pass, as well as the foundation of the Assassin Temple, would be destroyed. The decision was incomparably difficult, and the fierce aura emitted from Xing Yu's body was fluctuating unstably. 9. Suddenly, a light laugh rang out. "Your Majesty is really leisurely and elegant. But, if you want to destroy our Exorcist Mountain Pass, I'm afraid your Majesty still has to consider it carefully." The voice that suddenly appeared sounded a bit old, but carried a bit of a relaxed tone. The next moment, without any warning, 6 rays of light abruptly erupted in front of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Among these 6 rays of light, 2 were gold, 1 was bluish-purple, 1 was milky white, 1 was cyan, and 1 was red. The 6 rays of light shone in the sky, although they were far from being as terrifying as the Demon Emperor's demon god pillars. But, when these 6 rays of light soared into the sky, the formidable pressure in the hearts of the Exorcist Mountain Pass's people instantly disappeared. On top of the city wall, everyone was gasping for breath. At some unknown time, there were unexpectedly 6 people below the Exorcist Mountain Pass. At this moment, these 6 people were slowly rising into the sky under their own light, facing the distant Demon Emperor. Seeing their appearance, the Demon Emperor couldn't continue playing the numbers game, and his complexion became somewhat gloomy. "You old fogies are really like ghosts that won't go away. Do you really think that this emperor doesn't dare to kill you?" the Demon Emperor coldly said. The old voice from before sounded again. "Your Majesty naturally dares. Your Majesty is the world's #1 powerhouse. Why wouldn't you dare? But, speaking of age, we are far inferior to your Majesty. We can't afford to be called old fogies." At this moment, the figures of these 6 people had already flown above the city wall. Unexpectedly, the overwhelming pressure of the Demon Emperor was completely blocked by them, and the soldiers of the Exorcist Mountain Pass on top of the city wall could now clearly see their appearances. Dressed in dazzling orange armor, the knight was at the forefront. This knight had a tall and sturdy figure, and including his head, his entire body was covered in armor. In his left hand was a giant orange shield, and in his right hand was a giant sword emitting the radiance of the sun. The giant sword's blade had 9 balls of light flickering, just like 9 dazzling little suns. The most shocking thing was the mount beneath him. It was impressively a real red dragon. This red dragon's body was more than 50 meters long, and its surroundings were sparkling with a sticky red light of fire elements. What was even more strange was that this red dragon's aura was actually one with that of the orange armored knight. Beside the knight was a warrior with a figure even more majestic than him. This warrior was dressed in a bluish-purple armor that similarly covered his entire body. His height was perhaps more than 2 meters, and his shoulders were extremely broad. Even if the armor was obstructing him, people could still feel his terrifying strength, as if he could tear apart the world at any time. His weapons were very peculiar. In his left hand was a blood-red giant axe, and in his right hand was a bluish-purple giant hammer. If one had to describe the feeling of looking at him, then the word intrepid would be the most suitable. On the other side of the night was an erratic black figure. He was as elusive as a black cloud, and one could not see his true form at all. However, that touch of coldness was exceptionally sharp. Around the black light beam that was brought up by that touch of black, fine black cracks were constantly appearing in the air. Of these 6 people, 3 were in the front and 3 were at the back. The 3 people in the back row were actually all women. This could be seen from their clothes. However, they were all wearing magic cloaks, so their appearances could not be seen. One of them was wearing a pure white robe, and on the back of the robe was a golden pattern of a 12-winged angel. The winner's robe was the saint's robe that represented the highest status of a priest. Even the current pope only wore such attire. Compared to the saint in front of them, he only had the pope's crown and scepter. In the saint's hand was an enormous staff that was more than 3 meters long. It looked like the staff in her hand was a tree branch, but it was a pure white tree branch, and there were 2 light golden fruits hanging on it. On the left of the saint was a woman wearing a golden magic robe. Around the bright golden magic robe, there was an extremely dense light element rising. Just the light emitted from her body illuminated the entire Exorcist mountain pass. But what was surprising was that the golden light emitted from her body was not dazzling. It dispelled the fear in the heart of the Exorcist mountain pass, and gave everyone a warm feeling like spring. The staff in her hand looked a lot more normal. It was also golden, and there were 6 fist-sized transparent gems at the top of the staff. Although there were no obvious marks on her body, anyone could guess that she was an expert of the 9th step magic god level. On the other side of the saint was a woman, but she was wearing a blue magic robe. Behind her, there was a faintly discernible blue door of light. Around her body, there were also light doors of different sizes that emitted a bizarre radiance. Spirit shaman, a shaman who could communicate with countless planes. After reaching the 9th step, she was the most mysterious and unpredictable peak expert of the 6 great temples. Unexpectedly, there were 6 9th step magic gods that rose into the sky to confront the demon emperor. The Exorcist mountain pass, which was originally suppressed to the point where it was nearly impossible to breathe, suddenly increased its momentum. Hero Xingyu floated to the side, his eyes revealing a bewildered expression. You are the fallen demon gods. So the legend is true, you are all still alive. The blue-robed spirit shaman turned her head to look at Xingyu, and said with a smile, "Young man, if we were dead, why would His Majesty the Demon Emperor be so silent?" The Demon Emperor coldly snorted. "Today, you are determined to clash with this emperor?" The aged voice came from the night. He indifferently said, "We naturally do not wish for it to be so. After all, we are not certain that we can kill His Majesty. But His Majesty should also be clear that we have a 20% chance of perishing together with His Majesty, and a 30% chance of inflicting heavy damage to His Majesty. If His Majesty is determined to destroy our Exorcist mountain pass, we humans, which have accumulated for thousands of years, do not mind starting a holy war with the demons. You demons may not necessarily be able to obtain the final victory. A 20% chance of perishing together with the demon emperor?" These words sounded like they were showing weakness to the enemy, but in the ears of the soldiers of the Exorcist mountain pass, they were filled with shock. What kind of existence was the demon emperor? He was invincible and invincible. These 6 human experts in front of them actually had the chance to perish together with him. What kind of cultivation was this? The demon emperor suddenly turned silent for a moment, his handsome face revealing a thoughtful expression. Just from this point, it could be seen that he was somewhat afraid of these 6 people in front of him. A 20% chance of perishing together wasn't just a joke. Once he suddenly died, it would be an incomparable blow to the demons. In the last 1,000 years, humanity's 6th great temple had developed very quickly, and it was already very difficult for the demons to gain an advantage in the war against humans. Especially since humans possessed a large number of magic weapons, which were very harmful to the demons. On the plains, although humans were still unable to contend against the demons, once humans disregarded the consequences and went all out in a desperate attack, the demons might not necessarily be able to gain an advantage. Moreover, the demons were highly centralized. Once the demon emperor died, then before the new generation of demon emperor matured, the demons would be like a plate of loose sand. The demon emperor had no choice but to consider these circumstances. Even if the opponents only had a 10% chance, he still couldn't easily take the risk. Alright, we can be considered to have known each other for many years, so this emperor will give you 6 face. I want to use my divine sense to search the Exorcist Mountain Pass. You are not allowed to obstruct me. If I don't find what I want, I will turn around and leave. If I find it, you can hand it over and I won't attack. Otherwise, even if this emperor has to pay some price, I will definitely raze this place to the ground today. The demon emperor's voice was very flat, with a bit of coldness, but in the ears of the 6 human powerhouses, they were filled with shock. The demon emperor was afraid of them, but they were 10 times more afraid of the demon emperor. Among the humans, they were the only ones who could restrain the demon emperor. If they fell in the Exorcist Mountain and the demon emperor wasn't seriously injured, then with this invincible existence commanding the demon army, the humans wouldn't be able to stop the demons from marching straight in. Both the humans and the demons didn't want to see both sides suffer. That was a battle to the death until the entire race was exterminated. The 6 human powerhouses were simultaneously silent. A layer of faint golden light spread out from the knight's body, enveloping the 6 of them as if they were discussing something. After a moment, the leading knight said in a deep voice, "All right, Your Majesty, please search, we won't interfere." They didn't know what the demon emperor was looking for, but if the Exorcist Mountain Pass really had what he was looking for, then it wouldn't be too late to hand it over after he found it. On the contrary, if the demon emperor couldn't find it, then the crisis before their eyes would naturally be resolved. Among the humans, there was no one who understood the demon emperor better than them. This demon's emperor at least had credibility. That was his dignity, and it couldn't be violated. The demon emperor coldly snorted, and in the next moment, the black color in the sky instantly spread, turning the entire sky above the Exorcist Mountain Pass pitch black. A formless spiritual fluctuation was like a fine rain falling from the sky, sprinkling on every corner of the Exorcist Mountain Pass. Long Houchen only felt as if he had fallen into a vast and boundless ocean. It was as if this enormous spiritual force was only targeting him, and in that vast and boundless energy, he was practically unable to hide. Everyone had similar thoughts as Long Houchen, and their complexions were all pale. What kind of terrifying spiritual force was needed to reach such a degree? Suddenly, Long Houchen felt his body heat up, and immediately after, his 3,000 points of internal spiritual energy suddenly crazily poured out, quietly following a special path. On his forehead, a faint light pattern lit up, but this time, it wasn't purple, but rather a faint golden color. The surrounding people's attention was on the demon emperor and the 6 human powerhouses, so naturally no one noticed these slight changes on Long Houchen's body. But Long Houchen's complexion greatly changed. He could feel that the one who borrowed his strength, wasn't it Haoyue? Thinking of the 3 demon beasts that the demon emperor was looking for, Long Houchen was secretly overwhelmed with shock. Could it be that the ruler of the demons was really looking for Haoyue? In the barracks, Haoyue's 3 heads had already opened their eyes, and the aura on his body had been restrained to the extreme. Little Fire and Little Green's heads were crouching, while Little Light's head was raised, and a golden halo was emitted from its eyes. If one carefully sensed it, they would discover that the light attribute aura it was emitting was exactly the same as Long Houchen's. Not only that, Haoyue's scales were all suffused with a layer of gold, as if his entire body had changed color. If Long Houchen was here, then he would definitely be able to guess that Haoyue was currently relying on Long Houchen's bloodline to conceal his aura. He was no longer an existence that came from another world. When he had just arrived in this world, he had already undergone the baptism of Long Houchen's blood filled with the aura of light. The child of light's blood had already become a part of his bloodline. At this moment, he was ingeniously stimulating the aura of this bloodline, temporarily transforming it into his own aura, while his original aura was completely concealed within. The demon emperor quietly floated in the air. Gradually, his eyes suddenly flashed with a strange color, and his gaze swept towards the Exorcist mountain pass. An hour had already passed. Whether it was the demons or the humans, this hour was not a good time. One side was prepared to attack at any time, while the other side was prepared to fight to the end. They were all quietly waiting for the result to appear. Finally, the blackness above the Exorcist mountain pass slowly retracted, and the demon emperor waved his long sleeves at both sides of his body. It seems that my information was wrong. The 6 human powerhouses were astonished to discover that in the depths of the demon emperor's eyes, they unexpectedly saw a sense of relief and relaxation. The 6 people couldn't help but be secretly astonished. Just what important thing was this demon emperor looking for that even an existence like him would be nervous? Not only did he personally come, he even had the intention of seizing it at all costs. The orange-yellow armored knight indifferently said, "Since that's the case, then I ask your majesty to abide by your previous promise." Demon Emperor Feng Xiu slightly nodded and suddenly smiled. A faint smile appeared on his delicate pale face, appearing strange and evil, yet filled with a special charm. "Actually, I really want to know, how long can the 6 of you live, and how long can you stop me? This world, sooner or later, will belong to us. Actually, you don't need to worry, towards humans I already don't want to kill so much. After all, there are many things that only humans can possess, and we demons also need. For example, knowledge." The knight's face was covered by the helmet, and his expression couldn't be seen, but his voice seemed to have become even more indifferent. "Your Majesty doesn't need to worry about this. However, your Majesty also needs to be careful. Don't give us any opportunities to take advantage of. In the 300 years since the fall of the demon gods, we have already harvested the lives of 39 demon gods. If your Majesty can become the 40th, then our lives will undoubtedly be perfect." Demon Emperor suddenly laughed brightly. "Actually, I don't want you to die in this world. If you don't even have an opponent, wouldn't your life be very boring? There's no harm in this Emperor telling you, in fact, you only have a 5% chance of dying together with me. This is because this Emperor is the 3rd Demon Emperor in history to break through a spiritual energy value of 1 million. And also the youngest to break through a spiritual energy value of 1 million. How can the realm after a spiritual energy value of 1 million be something you can touch? Let's go." The demon god emperor smiled indifferently. That devilish smile of his was enough to leave a lasting impression in everyone's mind. In the next moment, the gorgeous black-robed demon god emperor turned around and left, disappearing in the huge dark golden radiance. All the darkness in the sky also disappeared like melting snow. The invisible demon army once again revealed themselves, orderly and slowly retreating from the 2 sides. Everything seemed to be orderly and unhurried. The 6 human powerhouses quietly floated in the air, motionless, only watching as the black golden radiance gradually disappeared. This time, the demons disappeared very thoroughly. Not only did the demon emperor leave, even the demon army that attacked the Exorcist mountain pass directly retreated like a tide. Their tents had unexpectedly disappeared long ago, and it was clear that they had decided to either attack with full force or retreat. Watching as the demon army gradually disappeared, many people on the city wall felt as if they were about to collapse. Even if they faced the demons and fought a bloody battle to the end, they wouldn't necessarily feel so powerless. However, in that short period of time just now, the pressure that the demon emperor brought to their hearts was really too intense. 6 seniors, the demons have retreated. Please rest in the Exorcist mountain pass. Chivalrous Xing Yu respectfully saluted the 6 powerhouses floating in front of the city wall. The 6 people slowly turned around, but didn't ascend the city wall. These 6 people were clearly led by the knight. That knight indifferently said, "No need. We still have to follow the Demon Emperor, in case he plays any tricks. I heard that the newly promoted monster hunters are currently training in the Exorcist Mountain Pass?" "Yes," Xing Yu hurriedly replied. They were all at the 9th step, but he was extremely respectful to these powerhouses, completely following the etiquette of a disciple. "Xing Yu." The knight's aged voice suddenly couldn't be heard. Opposite him, Xing Yu repeatedly nodded his head. After a moment, the 6 figures turned into 6 streams of light, like a startling red, soaring into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Xing Yu unexpectedly knelt on one knee in front of the city wall, loudly saying, respectfully sending off the demon god. There was basically no need for anyone to command. All the soldiers on the city wall knelt on one knee, loudly shouting, respectfully sending off the demon god. They were all very clear that if not for the appearance of these 6 powerhouses, they would very likely have to stay in the Exorcist Mountain Pass forever. Demons. Feng Xiu quietly floated in the air. At this moment, there was no huge demon god pillar beside him as a background. He looked very much like a human. Only that black luxurious robe emitted a supreme dignity that couldn't be offended. And Luoxian, Sai Gong, and Xier, the 3 demon gods, stood beside him with their hands hanging by their side. These 3 great demon gods' bodies were actually somewhat trembling, showing that they weren't calm at this moment. They were even afraid. "Your Majesty, we really felt his aura. That's why. Your Majesty, please punish us." After all, Luoxian was ranked the highest among the 3 demon gods, so he braced himself and said. Feng Xiu indifferently said, "Do you have absolute certainty?" "I." And Luoxian didn't dare to continue speaking. Even if he really had absolute certainty, how could he say it at this moment? What's more, he originally only had a preliminary feeling. Those 6 loathsome fellows didn't obstruct my investigation. Within the Exorcist Mountain Pass, every inch of land is enveloped by my divine sense. But there was no Austin Griffin's aura. The 3 great demon gods looked at Feng Xiu's indifferent eyes, and simultaneously knelt in the air, their bodies prostrating, not daring to make any more excuses. "Forget it. You guys did the right thing. If it really was his aura, even if there was only a 1% certainty, you should have informed me at the first instant. Although this trip was in vain, at least I can rest easy." Feng Xiu slightly waved his hand, and an invisible stream of air lifted Luoxian and the other 2 up. A faint smile appeared on Feng Xiu's face. Coupled with his black hair, he unexpectedly gave off a dazed feeling, making it impossible to distinguish whether he was a man or a woman. Really interesting. Although I didn't find him this time, I did find another interesting little fellow. It seems that my second-in-line successor has been found. Although the 3 great demon gods were somewhat puzzled by his words, they didn't dare to answer. Although the 3 demon gods were a little confused by his words, they did not dare to answer. Although the 3 great demon gods were somewhat puzzled by his words, they didn't dare to answer. Even if they were all of the 72 demon god pillars, the difference in their strength would be like the difference between heaven and earth. If Feng Xiu wanted to kill the 3 of them, it wouldn't be any harder than crushing an ant. Moreover, the Demon Emperor was the totem of the demons. He was everything to the demons, and his words were the rules of the demons. Let's go. After a few years, we'll go look for this interesting little fellow. This time, those 6 annoying fellows obstructed me again. However, they also exposed their weakening life force. How much longer can they last? 5 years? 10 years? Humans will eventually become a tribe under my feet. As he stepped into the void, the sky suddenly darkened. The huge black dragon that covered the sky flickered for a moment, and in the next moment, His Majesty the Demon Emperor had already disappeared into thin air. Soldier rank 1 monster hunters and the other monster hunters were on their way back to the barrack. Lin Xian patted his chest as he walked. I was really scared to death just now. That's the Demon Emperor. He's too terrifying. Is that really a level that we humans can reach? Did you hear that? 1,000,000 spiritual energy points. He said he's already reached 1,000,000 spiritual energy points. What kind of concept is that? I heard that after reaching the 9th level, not only is the total amount of spiritual energy high, but what's more terrifying is that each of their attacks can reach the upper limit of their spiritual energy point. And after one attack, their spiritual energy can instantly recover to its peak, and the next attack is still the upper limit of their spiritual energy point. If the Demon Emperor has 1,000,000 spiritual energy points, doesn't that mean that each of his attacks can reach 1,000,000 spiritual energy points? Alright, don't say any more. If you continue, we'll lose all confidence. Sima Xian said unhappily. Originally, he was quite excited recently, having finally broken through to the 5th level. But after witnessing the strength of a true powerhouse, he suddenly felt that he was no different from an ant. Wang Yuanyuan muttered. I'm glad that the thing that the Demon Emperor is looking for isn't Haoyue. A 3-headed demonic beast, I thought. Hearing her words, other than Kair, everyone's gaze fell on Long Haochen. After leaving the city, Long Haochen didn't make a sound. They were all very clear that if the Demon Emperor's target was really Haoyue, with Long Haochen's personality, even if he and the Demon Emperor were worlds apart, he would still fight to the death. Feeling the gazes of his companions, Long Haochen sighed. I can't be sure if the one he's looking for is Haoyue. Chapter 68. I'm not sure if he's looking for Haoyue. After listening to Long Haochen's words, the expressions of his companions became a little strange. Qin Inger smiled strangely and said, Say, should we be looking forward to Haoyue or not? If it's a magical beast that even the Demon Emperor has to personally find, then how much potential will it have in the future? Wang Yuanyuan nodded and said, What a pity! If Haoyue is really it, I'm afraid he won't be able to escape the detection of the Demon Emperor's divine sense. I don't think so. Long Haochen did not tell them about the changes in his body, because it was a secret that belonged to Haoyue. Soon, they had returned to the barrack. The moment they pushed the door open, the others did not react, but Long Haochen and Kair's bodies trembled, and they subconsciously took half a step back, not entering the barracks. It was not because they felt any changes in the barracks, but because they subconsciously felt a chill rising from the bottom of their hearts, as if the barracks in front of them had become an abyss that could devour everything. The others' reaction was not slow either. At the moment when Long Haochen and Kair suddenly felt alarmed, the others immediately stepped forward, retreated, and arranged themselves into their usual attack formation. Come in. Xing Yu's deep voice sounded in the barracks. Only then did Long Haochen breathe a sigh of relief. It turned out that the invisible danger came from a great-grandfather. But why did he suddenly come to the barracks? Puzzled, the crowd filed into the room. Long Haochen immediately looked at Haoyue, who was sleeping in the corner. Haoyue was still lying there, as if nothing had happened, still asleep. There were 2 people in the barracks. Other than Xing Yu, there was also a middle-aged man in his 30s. At that moment, the middle-aged man was standing next to Haoyue. He narrowed his eyes as he stared at it, the corners of his mouth curling into a faint smile. What was even more surprising was that Xing Yu stood beside him with his hands by his side, appearing very respectful. A great-grandfather. Seeing Xing Yu, Long Haochen hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. The others also followed suit to greet the Assassin Temple's temple master. Xing Yu waved his hand at them, indicating for them to wait. The middle-aged man slowly turned around and his gaze landed on Long Haochen. Facing each other, the first thing Long Haochen saw was a pair of vast eyes. Yes, this middle-aged man's eyes could only be described as vast. It was a pair of jade-blue eyes that looked like a boundless ocean. This middle-aged man's appearance was not outstanding. In fact, he looked very ordinary. However, just by standing there, the Assassin Temple's temple master, the dignified rank 9 hero, Xing Yu, seemed as inconspicuous as his attendant. More importantly, this middle-aged man did not give off any powerful aura at all. He was just like an ordinary middle-aged man. This strange phenomenon caused the 7-soldier level number 1 monster hunters to be stunned, especially Long Haochen and Kair, who had the strongest senses. Long Haochen was shocked, while Kair frowned. She could not see, but she could not lock onto the person beside a great-grandfather. He was like the wind, but also like light. Everything was so pure. Greetings, soldier level number 1 youngsters. As soon as this middle-aged man spoke, Long Haochen and the others couldn't help but change their expressions. That was because they had heard this voice before. It was precisely the voice of the fallen demon knight clad in red armor who had fought against the demon god Emperor head-on. It was the aged voice that had experienced the vicissitudes of life, and belonged to that fallen demon god knight. For a moment, Long Haochen and the others were stunned. They had never thought that such a big shot would visit their living quarters. The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Surprised? Actually, we came here for 2 reasons. One is because of the Demon Emperor's unusual movements, and the other is for you guys." Everyone felt their minds go blank. This legendary human in front of them actually said that he came for them? Long Haochen couldn't help but ask, "Senior, you are?" The middle-aged man smiled and said, "Let me introduce myself first. My name is Chun Zidian, the leader of the fallen demon god monster hunters, Guardian Knight." The name Chun Zidian was unfamiliar to Long Haochen and the others. However, when he added the words monster hunters behind the words fallen demon god, Long Haochen and the others couldn't help but widen their eyes. Just now, those 6 mighty figures, they were actually monster hunters? Although Long Haochen and the others had always known that monster hunters played an extremely important role in the Sanctuary Alliance, they were geniuses who truly understood how terrifying monster hunters were. Fallen Demon God, this was obviously the title of monster hunters. It was also the highest level of monster hunters. Even the Demon Emperor had to be wary of such a high-level monster hunter. What kind of glory, what kind of strength! For a moment, the crowd, who was initially a little discouraged by the unparalleled strength of the Demon Emperor and these legendary mighty figures, unknowingly revealed a glimmer of brilliance in their eyes. It turned out that monster hunters could actually be so powerful. Looking at the changes in the children's expressions, Chun Zidian said, "The fallen demon god was established 312 years ago. Back then, we were like all of you, with the name Soldier Level 1. I still clearly remember that year, when I was 17 years old, I became the leader of the Soldier Level 1 Monster Hunters. 312 years. What a long period of time. This year, I'm already 329 years old, I'm no longer young. However, before the responsibility on our shoulders is lifted, we really aren't willing to die like this. Human life will increase with the existence of spiritual power. 10,000 spiritual energy points was enough for a profession to live for over 100 years without any external interference. Once the cultivation reaches the 9th stage, the spiritual power will exceed 100,000. 200 years will be easily reached. But now we're already more than 300 years old. After all, the lifespan of humans can't be extended to thousands of years like the demons and the demon god. We've all reached the end of our lifespan. At most, we have about 5 years left to live." The members of the Soldier Level 1 Monster Hunters listened quietly to this legendary powerhouse's narration. He spoke very calmly, as if he was narrating something that couldn't be more ordinary, but the eyes of Long Haochen and the rest, including Kair, were filled with deep reverence. 312 years of monster hunters also meant that they had fought against the fallen demon god and the demons for a whole 312 years. What kind of achievement was this, and what kind of sacrifice was this? They had sacrificed their entire lives for all of humanity. Chun Zidian said, All these years we've been observing the growth of our descendants. Unfortunately, we've never found someone who can take over our mission. For more than 300 years there have been amazing people, but there hasn't been a sufficiently outstanding team. You must be Long Houchen. Chern Zidian's gaze fell on Long Houchen. Yes, Senior. Long Houchen bowed respectfully. Chern Zidian nodded and said, "Originally, your father was a very good candidate, but unfortunately, he had some flaws in his character. He was too stubborn and narrow-minded. He completely focused on improving his own abilities. Although he was strong enough, he couldn't become an outstanding team leader." Among the 7 members of the Soldier Level 1 Monster Hunters, they rarely talked about their families. Long Houchen himself was only familiar with Kair and Han Yu. As for the background of the other companions, he wasn't very clear. Among them, only Kair knew where Long Houchen's family was. Even Han Yu only vaguely knew about it. At this moment, hearing Chern Zidian, this legendary almighty, acknowledge the strength of Long Houchen's father and give him the evaluation of being sufficiently strong, the expressions of the members of the Soldier Level 1 Monster Hunters were very interesting. After all, Long Houchen was only in his teens. How old would his father be? To be evaluated as strong by a legendary almighty, he would probably be a rank 9 powerhouse. A rank 9 powerhouse of the Knights Templars. These few Soldier Level 1 Monster Hunters were not ordinary people. With just a simple sentence from Chern Zidian, they vaguely guessed who Long Houchen's father was. For a moment, they couldn't help but look at each other, but their hearts were burning with passion. As a son, Long Houchen naturally couldn't criticize his own father. He could only listen to Chern Zidian's narration. However, he wouldn't refute it either. This legendary almighty in front of him had sacrificed for the Alliance for more than 300 years. How could his evaluation be inaccurate? Chern Zidian's deep gaze suddenly became intense. That pure and clear light caused Long Houchen to tremble from the depths of his soul. Heroes are born from fate. It's the will of the heavens. A few years ago, I met Xingyu once, and he told me about your situation. Because of this, I paid special attention to your performance in the Monster Hunters trials. Not bad, you are all outstanding young people. You all have a glorious legacy. Your batch of youths is not bad, but without a doubt, you all have the most potential. I hope that one day you can lead your team and take over our mission. When Chern Zidian said these words, his voice was actually very sincere. To the 7 members of the Soldier Level 1 Monster Hunters, their emotions were like fireworks that had been ignited, bursting with intense light and flames. Even Kair's face revealed some excitement. A true team must trust each other. There must be no barriers. The first thing you have to do is to understand each other well. This is not to show off, but to let your companions know your true strength and potential. This way, the development of the team will not take any detours. Speaking up to this point, Chern Zidian seemed to be a little emotional. Children, you all have a unique opportunity now. However, the process of growth is indispensable. In this process, you can only rely on yourself. Only by relying on your own efforts can you truly obtain strength that belongs to you. I hope that one day, you can inherit the title of the fallen demon god and replace us, or even do better than us. We only have about 5 years left. When our lives are about to come to an end, we will find the demon emperor. As for how much time we can buy for you, even we are not sure. Therefore, you cannot relax for even a moment. However, you must pay more attention to protecting yourself. The integrity of the team is the foundation of future development. Long Houchen is the person that the demon emperor is looking for, your demonic beast companion. Chern Zidian turned his gaze to Long Haoyue, who seemed to be in a deep sleep. Long Houchen did not dare to hide anything and said truthfully, "It's possible, but I can't be sure." Chern Zidian's eyes flashed. "I think it's very likely. I've investigated. You used a blood contract to complete the contract with the Night Sacred Mountain. In that case, before you and it are strong enough, do not let it appear within the range of the Demon Emperor's perception. It was able to hide from the Demon Emperor just now, it should be able to do the same in the future. Humanity needs a hero like the son of Samsara. I came to see you today, one, to encourage you. In addition, there is a secret that I want to tell you. The demons are very strong. For the past 6,000 years, we humans have spared no effort in developing, but to this day, we are still unable to truly fight against the demons. The reason is because of the demons' 72 demon god pillars. It is because of their strength that we can only rely on the natural moat to stay safe in a corner. And this is under the premise that the 6 of us are keeping an eye on the Demon Emperor. Once we fall, if the Demon Emperor joins the battle against us humans, then the natural moat will no longer be a natural moat. In the past 300 years, we have killed 39 demon gods, among which the highest ranking was the 4th demon god pillar. But they all passed on without incident. To this day, the demons still have 72 demon gods. Not a single one has decreased. Do you know why this is? Long Houchen and the others were all well educated and had a considerable understanding of the demons. On the side, Han Yu blurted out, "It's because of the demon god pillars." Chen Zidian nodded. Yes, it's because of the demon god pillars. For the demons, the demon god pillars are their divine weapons. The 72 demon god pillars have 72 divine weapons. As long as the demon god pillars are still there, even if the demon god dies, their inheritance will continue. So, to truly kill the demon gods, there is only one way. Destroy them and destroy the demon god pillars they belong to. But, the demon god pillars are the Mo clan's divine weapons. How can they be destroyed so easily? When we discovered this secret, we tried countless times, but in the end, we did not succeed. But, we succeeded in summarizing an experience. To destroy the demon god pillars, we first need a powerful weapon that can destroy them. At the same time, we need to kill the demon god within half an hour. Only then is this possible. We almost succeeded once. But because of the sudden arrival of more than 10 demon gods, we failed on the verge of success. Since then, the demons have paid more attention to the protection of the demon god pillars. Moreover, the demon gods will never be together with the demon god pillars, so our chances of making a move are greatly reduced. Long Houchen asked, "Senior, since the demon god pillars are the demon's divine weapons, what grade of equipment would be needed to destroy them? Would it also need a divine weapon?" Chen Zidian shook his head and said, "The 72 demon god pillars are collectively known as the demon's divine weapons. But according to their ranking, they are the same as the demon gods, and their power is different. But to destroy even the lowest grade demon god pillar, you need an epic grade equipment. So, you still have a long way to go. In this life, my biggest regret is not being able to obtain the throne of God. I was once young and frivolous and lost my chance. Otherwise, we might have already succeeded in destroying some of the demon god pillars. On this point, I have to remind you, when your cultivation reaches the 9th step and you obtain the recognition of the throne of God, you must not bite off more than you can chew. You must follow the guidance of the throne. That year, I obtained the recognition of 4 of the thrones, but I insisted on fighting for the eternal throne. In the end, I did not obtain anything, and I will never be able to establish a connection with the throne of God. With your talent, you are even stronger than I was. But you must not be as stubborn as me. Any throne of God will be of incomparable help to you." "Yes, thank you, Senior." Chen Zidian took a deep breath, and his gaze became distant and sad. The 72 demon god pillars also represent the luck of the demons. With every pillar lost, the overall strength of the demons will be weakened, and the overall inheritance will be weakened. I'm afraid we can't do it, but I hope that in your lifetime, you can destroy as many demon god pillars as possible. The appearance of the Son of Light and the reincarnation Saintus at the same time has finally given us humans a chance to counterattack. I look forward to the day when you succeed. Senior. Long Houchen suddenly called out. Chen Zidian looked at him with a gentle gaze. Long Houchen said, Senior, if one day we can really become titled monster hunters, can we give ourselves a name? Long Houchen. Chivalrous Xing Yu could not help but call out. The fall of the demon god was a great honor for all humans, and he actually refused this glorious inheritance? The number 1 soldier level monster hunters were also a little shocked. Chen Zidian waved his hand at Xing Yu and said, Then what title do you want your monster hunters to have in the future? Long Houchen pondered for a while, then slowly raised his head. In his eyes, there was only perseverance and determination. I hope that our monster hunters can be called Glimmer of Light. Chen Zidian was slightly stunned, but soon his eyes became clear. He laughed and said, Good, good, good. Let's call it Glimmer of Light. Not inheriting, but surpassing. You are really good. Glimmer of Light. These 4 words echoed in the hearts of the 7 number 1 soldier level monster hunters. At that moment, everyone understood what Long Houchen meant, and all of them could not help but clench their fists. I can't help you grow. That would only be pulling up seedlings to help them grow. Only by understanding it yourself can you really reach the peak. However, since I'm here today, I have to give you a gift. You're in luck. This gift of mine is for all 7 of you. In the next moment, the entire barracks was filled with the aura of light. 7 huge golden runes with a strong aura of life were imprinted on the chests of Long Houchen and the others. Everyone felt as if their bodies were burning. In the next moment, when they looked at each other again, they were shocked to find that there was an additional feeling of flesh and blood between them and their companions. A faint golden haze rose from everyone's body. That mysterious feeling made them feel as if they were full of vitality. Chen Zidian smiled and said, This is a piece of equipment passed down from the early glorious era, the inheritance of the High Elves' royal family. The effect of this equipment is very wonderful. It can allow the 7 of you to complete the process of sharing life. In other words, if any one of you gets hurt, the 7 of you will share it. It's called the Soul Chain. Of course, at any time, each of you can take the initiative to break the connection with the Soul Chain. That way, you will no longer be affected by the Soul Chain until you take the initiative to reconnect. The simple explanation made Long Houchen and the others look pleasantly surprised. Epic equipment. This is a top-notch support epic equipment. Sharing life meant that the 7 of them were one. In the face of any difficulties and obstacles, Ji Xiu's ability to survive would be greatly increased. At the same time, if they were to act separately, it would also give the others a warning if anyone was attacked. This equipment would be of great use to them in the future. Work hard, children. Perhaps I won't be able to see that day, but I will still pray for the light of dawn to surpass the demon god's fall. Amidst the specks of golden light, Chen Zidian's figure quietly disappeared, as if he had completely turned into light. Without anyone's guidance, Long Houchen and the others knelt on one knee and bowed in the direction where he disappeared. Looking at this scene, Xing Yu's eyes were filled with gratification and pride. He was proud of the children in front of him. He didn't say anything. He took a step forward and disappeared into the void. After a while, the 7 soldier level number 1 monster hunters stood up one after another. Long Houchen turned around and looked at his companions. Senior Chen is right. We are partners. We shouldn't hide our origins and abilities. I, Long Houchen, have an innate internal spiritual energy of 97. I have the constitution of the Son of Light. My father is the Knights Templars, holder of the throne of God of Doomsday and Massacre, Knight of the Seal, Long Xingwu. He still didn't know that his innate internal spiritual energy had increased to 99 because of the light elemental sprite. Although everyone had already guessed who Long Houchen's father was, His innate internal spiritual energy of 97 still shocked Wang Yuanyuan, Lin Xian, Sima Xian, and Chen Ying. Han Yu and Kair already knew this secret, so it was relatively better. An innate internal spiritual energy of 97, the constitution of the Son of Light. No wonder he could have such achievements at such a young age. No wonder he could directly evolve the light elemental sprite. No wonder he was so kind. While everyone was shocked, Kair, who was beside Long Haochen, said faintly, "My full name is Saint Kair. Xing Yu, the hero, is my great-grandfather." Innate internal spiritual energy of 93. After receiving the inheritance of the son of Samsara, my innate internal spiritual energy increased to 100. Apart from Long Haochen, the other 5 people present didn't know this secret. An innate internal spiritual energy of 97 had already shocked them to the extreme. Now that another inheritor of the son of Samsara had appeared, everyone couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 69. Chen Zidian had mentioned the Son of Light and the Reincarnation Saint just now. The other 5 finally understood why Chen Zidian had chosen them as the soldier level number 1 monster hunters, and why he had such strong expectations for them. 2 geniuses that hadn't been seen for thousands of years were actually in their team. Although the other 6 legendary figures were powerful, they probably couldn't compare to the 2 in front of them in terms of talent. The Son of Light constitution had never appeared before. There had been the Son of Reincarnation, but a Son of Reincarnation had perished together with the Demon Emperor of that generation. Even though the Demon Emperor had entered a weakened state at that time, he was still the Demon Emperor. The future development of these 2 demon hunt squads walking together could be easily imagined. After a few minutes, Han Yu reacted first. He took a deep breath and said, "My grandfather is the Holy Knight of the Knights Templars, Han Q. Originally, my innate internal spiritual energy was 69, but after completing the retainer contract with Master, my innate internal spiritual energy was increased to 80, barely reaching the God's blessing constitution." "That works too?" Sima Xian, who was at the side, jumped up. He then rushed to Long Haochen's side, grabbed his hand and said, "Boss, Captain, are you still accepting retainer knight? Count me in. My innate internal spiritual energy is also 69. This is too much, it's almost 70. There was only a fine line between the innate internal spiritual energy of 69 and 70, but it was the dividing line between the 8th and 9th level. If one's innate internal spiritual energy was above 70, as long as they grew up smoothly and were willing to work hard, the possibility of reaching the 9th level was very high. On the other hand, the effort needed was several times more, and the success rate was much lower. Of course, all the luck was also very important. There were very few people with an innate internal spiritual energy above 70, not to mention 80. With an innate internal spiritual energy of 80, it was almost certain that one could break through to the 9th level. So it was no wonder that Sima Xian was so excited. Long Haochen smiled bitterly and said, "Everyone, let's finish introducing ourselves first. There shouldn't be a problem." "Master, but you already have 2 retainers. If you add another one, I'm afraid," Han Yu hurriedly said. He wasn't trying to undermine Sima Xian, but he was considering Long Haochen's situation first. Long Haochen shook his head at him and said, "It's all right. I don't plan on controlling all of you anyway. Moreover, my innate spiritual power is different from ordinary people's, so it won't be a problem for me to take in one more subordinate." Hearing this, Han Yu didn't say anything. Long Haochen was the Son of Light, and his situation couldn't be judged by ordinary people's standards. Sima Xian was so excited that he almost jumped up. Being a retainer for someone else was not something to be proud of, but it also depended on who the master was. Over the past few days, everyone had gained a better understanding of Long Haochen's personality. Even Long Haochen could treat the light elemental sprite, who could bring great benefits, with compassion, let alone his companions. Didn't they see how calm Han Yu was? I'll also introduce myself. I don't have any strong family background. My father was a berserker in the Temple of Warriors, and my mother was a six-step archbishop in the Temple of the Priests. When I was still very young, my father passed away in a battle with demons. He was a hero in the Temple of Warriors. My attributes followed my mother's light attribute, but I also have my father's berserk ability. This can also be considered an anomaly. My mother didn't want me to die on the battlefield like my father, so she wanted to nurture me into a priest. However, I said that I couldn't learn the healing skills of a priest, and that I could learn the combat skills much faster. That's why I'm in this situation now. Since I was young, I didn't have any teachers to guide me, and I've been fumbling around on my own, so my strength is a bit weaker than yours. However, I will definitely work hard in the future, and strive to become a commandment priest. Although he said it simply, innate internal spiritual power of 69 points was already an outstanding existence in the entire Temple League. Just by fumbling around on his own, he was able to reach the peak of the fourth step at around the age of 20, and now he had even entered the fifth step. This was not an easy thing to do. Lin Xian said gloomily, "Why am I not of the light attribute? And there's also the good thing of talent suppression. My grandfather is the deputy temple master of the magic temple, a holy magister, and the leader of the magic instructors, Lin Chen. However, he doesn't like me very much. I'm the opposite of Sima. He can't learn healing magic, but I can't learn offensive magic. However, in terms of potions and spiritual power cultivation, my talent is still not bad. Innate internal spiritual power of 74 points. If it wasn't for the fact that I can't learn offensive magic, I'm also a genius. However, even if I only have potions, I'm still very powerful." He said it very humorously, and everyone couldn't help but laugh. However, Long Haochen could faintly see that when Lin Xian said these words, there was a hint of sadness in the depths of his eyes. Long Haochen secretly thought that Lin Xian's situation of not being able to learn offensive magic might not be as simple as Sima Xian's. However, this involved the privacy of other people's pain, so Long Haochen naturally wouldn't ask. Wang Yuanyuan said, "It's my turn. I don't have potions, but I have power. I'm the inheritor of the mighty miracle god's bloodline, and our bloodline is one of the main forces of the warrior temple. My great-grandfather was once a ninth-step berserker, and later died in the hands of the demons. My grandfather was the previous temple master of the warrior temple, also ninth step, and died in the hands of the fifth demon god of demons. My father followed my grandfather and died in the battlefield. Now, in our bloodline, I'm the only inheritor." Hearing his words, everyone's expression became solemn. A great-grandfather, grandfather, and father all died in the hands of the demons. No wonder Wang Yuanyuan fought so hard in the battle against the demons. This was a blood feud. At this moment, although her expression was indifferent, the murderous intent in her voice was not concealed at all. "I admire the seniors of the fallen demon god, and my life's goal is the same as theirs. This lady, will fight the demons to the death. Let me give you guys a heads up, I don't like men, and I won't have any emotional entanglements. Other than killing the demons, I don't have any other goals." When she said the last sentence, she glanced at Sima Xian, who was in a state of excitement. Hearing her words, Sima Xian was slightly stunned, and the excitement from the talent suppression sharing immediately weakened. He frowned, but quickly returned to normal. "Sister Yuanyuan, it's fine if you don't like men. You still have me. I don't like men either." Chun Inger giggled. "You've all met my grandmother, the Soul Temple's deputy temple master, hall master of Spirit Fantasy Hall, and Soul Emperor level summoner San Shui. My grandfather is the Soul Temple's temple master. They insisted on arranging a marriage between me and Yang Wenjiao, so I ran away. I didn't expect my luck to be so good in the Monster Hunter's trials, and I summoned a rank 8 demon in the first round of the preliminaries. As a result, no one dared to fight me head-on. You know what happened next. Let me tell you a secret, Yang Wenjiao is the grandson of Alliance Master Yang Haohan. You've also met Alliance Master Yang Haohan, the Knights Templars Temple Master, the current Alliance Master of the Temple League, the owner of the Throne of God of Protection and Mercy, and the Knight of the Seal of the Knights Templars Defense and Coordination. Although everyone had already guessed that Chen Ying-er's background was not ordinary, they were still secretly surprised after hearing her words. The Soul Temple was the most mysterious among the 6 temples, and she was actually the grandson of the Temple Master. Lin Xian asked curiously, "Then what's with your Living Soul Gate?" "That's a rank 8 summoning spell." Chen Ying-er said helplessly, "My innate internal spiritual energy is a bit strange. No magic tool can detect its value. My grandpa said that I was born with the chaotic body. It's a very special situation. The chaotic body has a strong uncertainty, and it's very difficult to learn any summoning spell before reaching the rank 7. However, if I can reach the rank 7 and understand the profound chaos, then I can instantly cast any summoning spell below the rank 7. And I will definitely reach the rank 9. I even have the ability to directly contact other planes. The chaotic body has appeared before, and it's said that the demons are very afraid of people with my chaotic body. So, once they find a summoner with the chaotic body, they will definitely send out a large number of strong people to kill him. This is also one of the reasons why my grandpa and grandma insisted that I marry Yang Wenjiao. I'm not afraid. I don't want Yang Wenjiao to protect me. I don't want my grandpa and grandma to beg me. A physique that even the demons are worried about? Although I don't know what the demons are worried about, there's no doubt that even if this chaotic body can't be compared to the Child of Light and the Saint of Samsara, it's probably not much worse. In this small team of 7, there are already 3 people with extraordinary talent. After Chen Ying-er finished introducing herself, Wang Yunyuan smiled bitterly and said, "I feel that if we can live until the day we get a title, it wouldn't be bad to be called Prodigy Monster Hunters." Early the next morning, the 10 teams of new monster hunters issued an order to assemble and ordered all the new monster hunters to pack up and prepare to return to the Holy City. The 3-month trial mission ended early because of the retreat of the demon army. Overall, this trial was a success. At least the 10 teams of monster hunters came out unscathed. They also made a certain contribution to the Exorcist Mountain Pass. They obtained the full affirmation of the Exorcist Mountain Pass military and the Assassin Temple. The time of youth shouldn't be wasted, so they naturally couldn't continue to stay here. The end of this trial also meant that the real journey of these 10 teams of new monster hunters was about to begin. The fall of the demon god, who had been unhindered on the continent for 300 years, was their ultimate goal. Sheng Lingxin and Lan Yanyu personally sent the 10 teams of new monster hunters out of the city. The carriage was already prepared and they were about to leave. Looking at her daughter standing beside Long Haochen, Lan Yanyu's beautiful eyes were already misty. Because her husband had used the spiritual stove of youth reversal to return to his youth, the relationship between her and her daughter had eased with great difficulty, but now they were going to separate again. As a mother, the pain in her heart could be imagined. Xing Lingxin also stood there looking at his daughter. His lips were tightly pursed. He had already recovered all of his memories, and the few times his daughter had come to see him, he deeply remembered it. The other members of the number 1 monster hunters had already followed Gaoingjie into the carriage. Only Long Haochen and Kair were still standing there. "Uncle Xing, Aunt Lan, please take care of yourselves." Long Haochen respectfully bowed to Xing Lingxin and Lan Yanyu. It wasn't a knight's bow, but a junior's bow. Xing Lingxin's gaze turned to the youth who had once gone through life and death with him. He walked in front of him with large strides, opened his arms, and gave him a big hug. "Long Haochen, thank you." 5 simple words, but they were all filled with emotion. Xing Lingxin was very clear about the reason for his daughter's change. If not for this child in front of him, his daughter's heart wouldn't have opened up. Although the time they had been in contact was very short, Long Houchen had already conquered Xing Lingxin's heart with his actions. Such a kind and responsible youth, the possessor of the child of light physique, as their daughter's partner, what else could they be picky about? Although they were still young, so what? Xing Lingxin firmly believed that no matter what, Long Houchen would do his best to protect his daughter. Lan Yinyu also walked over with Xing Lingxin. Xing Lingxin gave Long Houchen a hug, but Lan Yinyu looked deeply at her daughter. Her voice was a bit shaky and choked with sobs. "Kai Mommy, can Mommy hug you?" Kai-er's face was still expressionless, but with his sharp senses, Long Houchen could clearly see that at this moment, her body was slightly trembling. Her emotions clearly weren't as calm as her expression. Kai-er softly replied. In the next moment, tears flowed out of Lan Yinyu's eyes. She took a step forward and fiercely hugged her daughter, crying bitterly. It was also at this moment that Kai-er felt as if something in her heart had shattered. The shackles that had been restricting her all this time suddenly collapsed. An indescribable energy suddenly surged within her body. On her forehead, a series of black runes faintly flashed. Under the shocked gazes of Long Houchen and Xing Lingxin, the green bamboo stick in Kai-er's hand fell to the ground with a thud. A formless gray airflow suddenly left her body. Immediately after, her lifeless eyes instantly turned deep black, as if countless rays of light were surging within them. Kai-er was a little sluggish as she allowed her mother to hug her. She slowly raised her hands and gently hugged her mother. The originally pitch-black world gradually became brighter, and various colors were becoming clearer from blurry. Yes, at the moment when she accepted her mother's hug, the last shackle of the spiritual stove of samsara that had been troubling her was finally removed. She finally truly possessed the power of the spiritual stove of samsara. At the same time, her vision recovered. From this moment on, she was no longer the blind girl, but the true reincarnation saintess who could choose to lose her six senses. The image beside her was very clear. Kai-er was hugged by her mother, so at this moment, she could only see everything around her. She saw him and also saw her father. In just a moment, Kai-er's eyes became dazed, and her originally cold eyes finally became moist. Mom, Dad.